Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call a hearing to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, the Cree, Dakota peoples, and then the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. And introducing the panel members is Maurice Therian and Marcel Lavrando. Our assessor this morning is Mr. Kim Wong, and our recording secretary is Jaswinder Kumar. This morning we'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment roll according to the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested is described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by City Council and is independent, along with the City Administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing process this morning, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed, which each applicant following the swearing in will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. Excuse me. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the record. This morning we'll be hearing items 1 to 8 on our docket. So Mr. Kumar, can you swear in the assessor and applicant's testimony?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
I'm Wong.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Story, please state your full name.
My name is Jared Story.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're all familiar with the routine here, so we will proceed. So, Mr. Assessor, we're going to go to the first one on the docket, which is number 175 Greenway Crescent West. The floor is yours, Mr. Wong.
Okay. The subject property is 175 Greenway Crescent West. The file number is 22-3455. The roll number is 074-326-85000. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is $13,342,000. This is a residential apartment that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1976 and has 103 suites with 128 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 are some pictures of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,110 to get a potential income of $1,372,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,328,000. And we use a 46% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $707,000. Capped at 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $13,342,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 7 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their 2020 net operating income is $701,000, which is a little bit lower than the $707,000 that the model is estimated, but as noted, it's 0.87% higher than their actuals. On page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 9 are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6% to 5.74%. The remainder of my brief is the income statement supplied by the owner. So in conclusion, the model rents and cap rates are supported by the market, and their actual net operating income is within 1% of the model's net operating income. So I believe it supports the model's net operating income, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $13,342,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, questions?
Just a few, sir. Thank you. Mr. Wong, you mentioned the actual NOI, but did you make any attempt to stabilize the actual expenses in this property over at a minimum of a 3-year horizon? Was that exercise performed in any capacity?
No, I only looked at the 2020.
Okay. And did you notice though that, excuse me, the rents before the discounts, so what they're permitted to charge by the RTB before we factor in discounts, are actually higher than what the your model is higher than what they're permitted to charge by RTB. Did you see that?
It is higher, yes.
Okay. All right. So, okay, that's fine. So just to be very, very clear, this is all model derived, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and you've got now just to be clear again here, the photos on page 4, these are the marketing photos, correct?
They're from the property develop or the property manager's website.
Right, and they're advertising the suite, so they're marketing photos, right?
They're from their website.
Right. Okay. All right, and then I guess just very quickly, I suppose you've relied on these rental comps. Did you choose these yourself on page 6?
Yes.
Okay, and are you aware that 1, 2, and 4, those are all renovated recently, apparently? Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay, and are you aware similarly that on comp 1, that property has an elevator, a gym, and an outdoor rooftop patio and barbecue? Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay, and can we just for the sake of clarity, this property does not include an elevator, it's a walk-up, correct?
I do not know.
Okay, all right. Now, I know that the panel has all heard our piece on cap rates, but I just, just for the sake of expedience here, I noticed that there is a new one here on Henderson, and it obviously came in a little late in the game, but do you have any calculations to support that cap rate derivation that you're suggesting here on page 9 for that property on Henderson?
We haven't provided any of the calculations for any of the properties, but they have all been stabilized in a similar manner.
Okay. Was that a share sale? We didn't see it on Sabre. Was that did you have any?
I believe it is a share sale.
Okay. Were there any non-realty items included in that sale then?
I do not know.
Okay. And this is right next to the that'd be right next to the Norvilla Hotel, right? That's that building?
I believe so.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because with that building, I think it's called Norvilla Flats or something like that, it has about an acre of land behind it. Was that included in the sale, and was that considered in your calculation?
I am not sure.
Okay, those are my questions. Mr. Chair, I'll ask that my questions on that property carry forward. I just wanted to deal with that forthrightly. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Therian, questions of the assessor?
Yeah, I just had one. I'm sorry for my colleagues there or the people in the. I can't show my beautiful face today, so I can still speak. So, okay.
You're forgiven.
Have you any record of inspection of this property, of a condition of the building in your file there, Mr. Wong?
I don't believe it's been inspected in the, not as far as I can tell, not recently.
So you have nothing and any idea of what you would qualify as condition of the building, or again, no record?
We don't have any record. Just by looking at the images on my page 3 and 4, it does appear to be, I guess, well managed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you. Mr. Larondo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at your pictures that you have for it that you said you picked up from them, starting on page 4, it doesn't look like there's been any major renovations in this place, does it? I mean, this is classic 1976, is it not?
It appears to be had some minor refreshing with regards to the kitchen and possibly the flooring and the carpeting. But aside from that, it appears to be, I guess, 1976.
Yeah. I mean, even the windows still got the aluminum windows, sliding windows. Air conditioning is not central air. It's just got an air conditioner in the living room area there. It's got electric heat throughout. We don't do that in the buildings anymore, do we? Because of the HRVs and the change error and all the rest.
Yeah, you might be more familiar with the code than I am.
But if it had been upgraded, these things would have been upgraded as well, correct?
Not necessarily. Sometimes renovations to the kitchen and the bathroom are the driving factors in being able to increase the rent.
Okay, well, looking at the bathroom, it's got the 1976 countertop and sink and all the rest in it, correct? And the bathtub and the tiles.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's been renovated.
I know, but you said the kitchen looked like it had been renovated. I'm looking at the kitchen. It's the same style of cupboards that are in the bathroom. Same doors, same handles. So it's probably the 76. Even the stove is an old ring type. The old fridge and the old fridge.
Sorry, I guess I'm just noticing with the kitchen that the handles have been refreshed. So that's so I think there was some effort made to refresh it. I'm not saying it's renovated.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear that it doesn't look renovated, not to me anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at their flooring, it does appear that it is newer flooring and carpeting.
Yeah, and with the newer apartments that are coming on the market today, most of them seem to have underground parking. This one's all exterior parking, correct?
Well, I'm not sure if all the new apartments have underground parking. That's not from my observation, but this one, it appears it is outdoor parking.
Yeah, and definitely no elevator because there's no elevator shaft on top.
Well, I wouldn't think it would be for a 3-story building, but there's a lot of apartment buildings. There's a lot of apartment buildings that don't have elevators.
Okay, so let's go to your. You supplied us with a list of buildings here on page 6, isn't it? Walk me through those apartments that are 3 and 4 floors. Your Portage Avenue, that one has an elevator.
That one has an elevator.
Does it not?
I wouldn't think that these ones have elevators because of the fact that they're about 3 stories.
But you haven't walked through them or seen them then?
I can't say for sure. I'm just saying that typically the 3 stories, they're called kind of 3-story walk-ups for a reason because they're normally walk-up. So I'm I definitely can't say for sure, but I would think that a lot of the 3 stories don't have elevators.
Okay, and the last question, and I think Jared had asked that. I'm not sure though. This is all model, correct? It's you didn't change
Yes,
any.
yes, I believe it is.
Okay, thank you. I've got no further questions, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Wong, any overrides in regards to the model's presentation here?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And I see, Mr. Wong, you are still,
Sorry about that. My dog's got somebody at the door.
I thought you were coughing. Anyways, Mr. Wong.
I'm just gonna go close my door.
Okay.
Stop it. I'm not just dropping off a package. Get him. Sorry. Oh. I'm sorry about that, gentlemen.
That's okay. Mr. Wong, you're still doing a workup in regards to justifying the model. Are you
Yes,
not?
that workup is to support the model. Yes.
Yeah. So you still do this, and you will probably continue to do it to support what the model is, I guess, calculating.
Yes.
So in other words, you're just justifying the existence of the model. Did you ever think about, just doing the presentation with the data that you have and not going to the model, or are you always going to be going to the model?
If the model has overestimated their net operating income by a noticeable amount, I would consider revising the value.
Okay. And I think you did that in one of them anyways.
And I believe maybe a couple of the properties in the docket.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get into that when we get there. I think it's on 2425 Portage Avenue. Yeah. I have no further questions. Mr. Story, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so as we've established here, the property is I will classify this as a very typical what we would call a MERB era mid 1970s apartment building. There are many of these throughout the city. It is indeed a walk-up, and in terms of the finishes, they are indeed basic. We would consider these to be very, very basic finishes. Mr. Lerner, you're absolutely correct. When we see those baseboard heaters and the in-wall air conditioning units, that is very much what we would expect to see of a under-renovated property from the late to mid 1970s. So very typical. I would agree with that in full. It is, again, a 3-story building. It's built in 76. It is in the St. James Assiniboia area. That's the north side of Greenway Crescent, just north of Portage Avenue. It is, it sits on 2.8 acres of land. It's zoned RM-FM, so multifamily medium. There are 103 units, including 5 bachelor suites, 46 1-bedroom units, and 52 2-bedroom units. Very typical suite mix for an apartment of this vintage as well. So ultimately, we have not relied on a model or any such thing. We haven't looked at other properties as rental proxies, because as I mentioned in my questioning, this property is indeed under the RTB guidelines, and they are permitted to charge a certain rent. That rent is on page 10 under line 1. That's the potential gross rents. So when we look at the 2020 rents, that top line is what they are indeed permitted to charge. The market, of course, will only bear so much, so they have to discount those rents back to what their tenants will effectively bear. That gives us our potential gross rent. You can see that the vacancy runs from a low of 1.2 to a high of 2.7, and in some years there is some collection loss. The city is using a vacancy rate of 3.2%. We are agreeing with that as well, it's on the low end of the citywide average. Citywide average, the reference date is about 3.8%. So 3.2 is a stabilized vacancy over the effective useful economic life of the property. Makes sense. We have looked to the most current laundry and parking income, as well as miscellaneous income recorded by the owner. We've included that as well. So ultimately, our effective gross income, based on actuals, is $1,288,811. The city is a fair bit higher at $1,328,441. We then stabilize our expenses. So we've taken the expenses from the year 2017 up to the year 2020, and where there are notes indicating our methodology. So for example, we've used a management fee of 5%. That's a typical industry standard, despite the fact that this property is recording a higher management fee. We use the industry standard. That would be commensurate with the behavior of a next prudent purchaser. We've used the most current utilities. I note that equates to 12.9 of the overall EGI. That's right in range of where we would expect it to be, if not somewhat on the low side. And we've stabilized the R&M on a per door basis, $1,782 per suite. So ultimately, our expenses are calculated as $640,288, and that equates to 49.7% of the effective gross income. So our actuals indicate an expense ratio of 49.7%, which is right in line, if not a touch low, for a building from the 1970s. We've used a cap rate of 5.5%. Now you've heard our cap rate information. You've been provided with our full study. I will suggest to you that typically, barring any sort of unique circumstances, properties typically run from 5 to about 6% in the city of Winnipeg for cap rates in this cycle. This is a property, as I mentioned, that is very, very typical, very, very true to its vintage. So we have applied a cap rate of 5.5%. I believe that that's on the conservative side. It could have been higher based on the fact that, well, perhaps a next purchaser might look at this with realizing that there should be some renovations potentially to bring it to a more current standard. However, it doesn't have a vacancy issue. It is achieving reasonable rents. So 5.5% makes sense. Ultimately, our value then is calculated as $11,791,313, which we then round to $11,791,000. Just further to my comment about performing a site-specific analysis of the property, on page 11, you've all been provided with our repair and maintenance table. So we take a 5-year average, and we back out CapEx, we back out waste and snow, and we stabilize the repair and maintenance on a per door basis. And that's where the figure of $1,782 per door comes from. The balance of my brief is, well, we have the city valuation. Again, that's all modeled, but then we have the income and expenses. And where we have fulsome income and expense statements for these properties, we're able to provide you with a very comprehensive workup of a stabilized analysis. And on page 16, you can just see, I'll just point to this once, but I believe we have these for all the properties today. Those red notes, those are our notes. So when these are the same statements that are submitted to the city. When we receive these, we go through them and we itemize these entries, and those are the entries that in fact inform our R&M study for the property on a site-specific basis, and that's how we determine our expense ratio. So they're not modeled; they're based on the actual performance of the property. Page 26. These are indeed marketing photos. So this is what is being put to the market as sort of the best of the best in this property. And you can see as we've sort of established that they're reasonably true to their vintage. We can see that there's some carpeting there. Some of that cabinetry is older. That tile looks to be older, but typical of what we would expect to see of a under-renovated property of this vintage. So based on our analysis of this property, of the income and expense, and the overall 5.5 cap rate that we believe to be reasonable at this at the reference date, we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed $11,791,000. That value again is $11,791,000. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Wong, questions of Mr. Story?
Yeah, just on your page 11 for the repair and maintenance.
Mhm. Yep.
So for the items such as flooring and appliance replacement, you've included those items in your repair and maintenance calculation?
Yes, those are, yeah, if they're red, so you can see it's color coded. If they're red, then they would be excluded. So
Okay.
yes, those would be included, but then again, stabilized. And once again, you know, a touch under $1,800 per door, that makes sense. So we don't see anything here that gives us any cause for alarm. That's exactly what we would expect to see. It's an older building, so it might be a little bit higher. The rents aren't extremely high, so yeah, that figure makes sense.
So in 2016, they spent 50,000 on flooring.
Flooring replacement in 16 was 50,000, in 17 it was 39, in 18 it was 27. The average on a 5-year average is 27,000. Yeah,
And
that's 206. Just to put that into context, Mr. Wong, that's $264 per suite.
Okay, and they spent 50,000 in 2016, but they spent less than 4,000 in 2020.
Yeah.
Is it possible that this could be considered capital?
No, I think we've captured it appropriately.
Okay. And I guess it's the same thing for the appliances. You wouldn't consider. Would some people consider those capital expenditures?
Well, I don't know if you have an R&M study for this property, we can talk about it. But ultimately, I think that, once again, not to belabor the point, but $1,700 or $1,800 per door for a property of this age makes sense. So in terms of, yeah, there's going to be appliance. That's, again, just very clearly, that's $131 per door. That's not when we stabilize it. So that's not out of sorts. Again, the 5-year average is 13,000, and once again, that's $131 per door. I think that makes sense.
Okay, so basically, you consider those items repair and maintenance. You don't consider them capital items.
I think the way that we've worked up our study here today, I think it makes sense. And yeah, I think if you have some rebuttal to that, or if you have your own study based on the submission, happy to discuss it. But no, I feel very comfortable with the way that we've worked up this R&M study.
Okay. Not the question I asked, but that would be all my questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Therian, questions?
Yeah, I just add one on the expenses. I know that you referred, and when the assessor's question, that was you using 3-year stabilized. But I was looking at the figures of 2017 on repair and maintenance, for example, and I see you've stabilized it at 40. I'm not sure I got the right line here, but there was a big expense, I think, in the previous year on repair and maintenance. Like in 2017, it was
Yes.
411,000. I'm just looking at the average. Am I reading this properly on the stabilized amount?
Oh,
Does
yeah,
that
no, you're
include 5 years, or did it include, because you talk about average 218, 219, but then there's 18, 19, 20 if we use 3 years. If we use 5, I guess we go back to 17. Could you clarify this for me,
sure.
please?
Yes, thank you, sir. That's a great question. So in 17, you can see that the R&M unstabilized that's reported, and that's yeah, you're quite correct. Line 27 is just a touch under $412,000, and then it goes down in 18, goes down in 19, goes down in 20. The average for 18, 19, and 20. So we're not including that, but we're showing it in the interest of transparency. We're showing you that the R&M average between 18, it says 18 and 19, but it should be 18 and 20.
Yeah, well, that was
yeah,
a
no,
question I had
there you go.
too.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's I apologize. It's for those 3 years, the average is 190,799. But if you move over to the next figure in the stabilized column, it's 183,583. So that's the number that we've stabilized based on 18, 19, and 20. And that works out. You can see that footnote under the remarks column, stabilized at 1,782 per suite. Yeah. So we're certainly not using that 411. We're using 183, and that's again informed by 18, 19, and 20, and then further stabilized in that exercise on page 11.
Okay. The other question I had was really more of a comment. I see that on this page you're showing the city's cap rate as 530, but in your documents, I think you had showed it at 535 somewhere previously.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, no, that could be. It is 5.3.
I see you've got it 530, although you had it 535 previously. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank you. Marcel?
Jared, you talked about the RTB a little bit. Are they as high as the RTB will allow them on their rents?
No, thank you. That's a great point. So those discounts, when we go back, and I'd mentioned this, I don't think I fleshed it out fully, but I did ask the assessor about this because the model is suggesting that the rents ought to be higher than what is permitted by RTB. Now, what is permitted by RTB is not necessarily what the market will bear. So in order for them to maintain that level, they have to discount the rents back to what the tenants will indeed bear. So if you look at the potential rents, it's not a huge discount, but it's just a touch under $6,700. So they're permitted to charge $1,258,212, but the market will bear $1,251,518 in 2020. So that's the figure that we use, but that's a far cry from the model suggesting $1,372,356. So that's a big point of contention here.
No further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Story, your cap rate of 5.5 came from?
Yes, so we've submitted our Altus cap rate study. We have a number of sales. I didn't go through it in full because just for fear of the panel having, and quite frankly, everyone having a bit of cap rate fatigue at this stage, but summarizing the cap rates, that's in every one of our briefs here. We can show you on page 8, we'll show you that the properties, we've bifurcated them by age and then by type. And when I say by type, I mean by low rise or high rise effectively, which is typical. I believe the brokers perform a similar breakdown. So ultimately, properties that are between 1 and 5 stories, built between 1960 and 1998, that's going to encompass a huge amount of the properties in the city of Winnipeg. Most properties in Winnipeg are built there's a huge amount of properties built in the 1970s, and frankly, a lot of them look like the one that we're dealing with today. And we would apply a cap rate of 5.5%. Now, we will consider adjustments for age, location, building type, and construction type, potentially inadequate suite mixes, small suite sizes. However, I've not made any adjustment to our baseline cap rate, though. I don't think it would be out of sorts if somebody were to suggest that the cap rate ought to be slightly higher based on the fact that the property is not indeed renovated to what we'll call a modern standard. But in the interest of not distorting the value, I've applied a cap rate of 5.5. I think that's solid. I think it makes sense.
Okay, I thank you. I'd like to get the explanation in that regard.
Yes.
I think that all right. Summation, either party. Do you want summation?
Sure. Just I guess a quick one regarding the applicant saying that the model as maybe overestimated in terms of the revenue, and I think it has overestimated in terms of the revenue, but when you look at it, also underestimated in terms of the expenses. So when you look at the overall estimate of net operating income, the model is fairly close, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value.
And Just very quickly, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that the actuals are a better indicator of value. We don't necessarily know how the model behaves or the inputs or sort of how it comes to its conclusions. So I will suggest to you that using actuals would be more typical of market behavior, and I would ask that weighted consideration be given to a site-specific analysis of the actual performance of the property in every case that we do today. Thank you.
I thank you, gentlemen. Let's move to the next property, which is 529 Country Club Boulevard. Mr. Wong, your presentation.
Okay. The subject property is 529 Country Club Boulevard. The file number is 22-2364. The roll number is 076, or sorry, the roll number is 075-656-15100. The roll year is 2023. The assessed value is $7,134,000. This property is a Manitoba housing property, so we will be looking to the market to value this property. This is a residential apartment block that's 13 stories high. It was built in 1976 and it has 107 suites with 64 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's just off Portage Avenue near Sturgeon. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $675 to get a potential income of $867,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $840,000. And we used a 55% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $370,000. Capped at 5.2%, we have an estimated market value of $7,134,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables, showing that the rents that we've applied from the model is well supported by the market. It is, it looks like it is below the market levels. On page 6 is a summary of the market rents from CMHC. If you use the market rents from CMHC, their annual potential would be $1,136,000, and that is much higher than what the model has utilized at $867,000. And the expenses, there are some expense comparables that range from 44 to 52%. This supports the model's expense ratio at 55.84%. So on page 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates, and on page 8 are some cap rate sales. You know, the subject property is a 13-story building. The sale of 1745 Henderson, which is a 12-story building, is at 4.28%. So that property is renovated, has been renovated, but I believe that the 4.28% supports the model's cap rate of 5.2%. On page 10 and 11 of our brief is the income statement supplied by the owner. And on page 12 are the market rents from CMHC. So when we look at this property from a market perspective, the model rent and cap rate is well supported by the market, and as are the expenses. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $7,134,000.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, sir. Mr. Wong, just very quickly, you mentioned that sale on Henderson again, but just to be clear, I think you said in the last file, you don't have any calculations to support that cap rate, and you don't know if it's a multi-role sale, and you don't know if it's a share sale that includes other non-realty items. Are those still all correct?
The workups have not been provided, but we have stabilized their net operating income using their income and expenses, but we have not presented them. With regards to those other aspects of this sale, I do believe it is a share sale. And with regards to the other questions that you asked, I am not sure.
Okay. And just so we're clear, you mentioned this is indeed rent geared to our subject property now is rent geared to income, and it's purpose-built seniors housing, correct?
I didn't say that.
Oh, so you're not aware that it's seniors housing?
You're asking me if I said that, and I didn't say that.
Oh, no, I'm asking if you're aware that it's seniors housing. No.
No, I'm just aware that it's owned by Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation, which is they provide I guess social housing.
Right. Okay. All right. With the model, well, okay. So just so we're clear, it is social housing. You can see on the first page the liability of grant. That's due to the fact that it's seniors housing. Does that make sense?
It's I guess it's owned by Manitoba Housing is why it's grantable.
Okay. All right. And it has 107 suites, but in terms of the suite mix, 82 of those suites are bachelor apartments and 24 are one-bedroom apartments. Does that suite mix affect the cap rate at all?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And 40% approximately of these suites have no parking, correct? Parking ratio is about 59.8%. Are you aware of that?
That is what it says.
Okay, and there's no air conditioning in this building, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And can we agree, though, that typically seniors properties that are built for the purpose of seniors housing will have what we'll call a higher degree of common area to encourage socialization? Is that your experience, that's typical, that we would find more common area in these types of properties?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. And so then, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here, but on page 5, when we see the gross floor area of the building, that's 69,583. And then that figure right beneath it of the gross floor area per unit that's calculated as 650. That's not accounting for the fact that's overstating the size of the suites. Is that a fair comment?
It includes all the common areas and hallways.
Right, and the actual suites, the bachelors are 420 square feet, and the one bedrooms are 627 square feet. Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay, I think we're getting close to the end of my questions here. Page 6, you have some expense comparables. What criteria was used to determine that those are appropriate for the subject as comparables? Is it age? Is it
the year built?
Okay, but they're not social housing, and they're not used for seniors housing, I'm guessing. Is that fair?
No, these are market apartment buildings.
Right. Okay, but are they private market seniors housing, or are they smaller suites, or do they have any? Is there any? It's just the age you're suggesting. Is that what you said?
The age and the size of the properties.
Size of properties. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Therian, questions of the assessor?
I'm just looking at page 7 on the cap rates, because to me, this file is a cap rate issue. I see the low rise is between 480 and 6 or whatever, in that sort of range across. Do you know if the model takes into account cap rates when it's social housing?
I don't believe it does, but we do look at the social. We do reflect that it is social housing. Typically, the rents are lower and the expenses are higher than market, as I've shown on my page 6. And so we've reflected the fact that it is seniors or social housing in that way. But I don't believe that any change is made to the cap rate.
Yeah, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but the appellant has the same NOI as you have. So obviously, to me, that's not the real issue. It was the cap rate issue that was That was important to me, and that's why I'm trying to get better answers on that.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
I guess I just like to say that, like, you know, to reflect the aspect, the social housing aspect of the property in the income and expenses. I believe that it does reflect it in that aspect, and to sort of maybe increase the cap rate further, maybe sort of I guess double counting the social aspect, the social housing aspect of it. I mean, I can understand that if you wanted to increase the cap rate to reflect the social housing aspect of it, but that would be fine if you were to utilize market levels of rent and expenses. So I think that would be fine, but to sort of reflect it in both the income, expenses and the cap rate, I think that would be kind of double counting it or overdoing it.
Okay, thank you. That's a fair comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Marcel, questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, can you tell me, Mr. Wong, when your cap rate study was done, did they include any social housing that was sold?
I don't believe so. Typically, the social housing that's sold, they're nonprofits, and to sort of utilize income or expenses that are a nonprofit, I'm not sure how accurate that would be in terms of estimating market value. Like, in the end, we're looking for a market value, and so to use non-market value information such as income or expenses from a nonprofit, I'm not sure if that would yield accurate estimates of market value. So I don't believe that we've utilized any of those sales in the model.
How about the sales of the Manitoba housing units?
What about them?
The ones that were sold?
What about the ones that are sold?
Were any of those used?
I don't believe that any of those are used, but I have seen the appraisals for them, and in the appraisals for them seem to indicate a cap rate of 3.5 to 5% in those appraisals. So the fact that we're at where we're at is at 5.2% is at the higher end of the range in my experience.
But do we not find that when they are bought and sold, the Manitoba housing units, that they're bought and sold so people will renovate them? Because they're usually a complete renovation when they're done, are they not?
Some of the ones that I've seen, just say for example, sold from Manitoba Housing to Winnipeg Housing, and so they're almost sold from one nonprofit group to another nonprofit group. As far as I know, I haven't seen one that is sold from say Manitoba Housing to a private organization who has then rehabilitated it. The only one that I can think of is the Lions on Portage, which is currently being sold, and that hasn't quite gone through yet. But outside of that one, I'm not sure of any housing properties that have gone to private organizations and have been renovated.
Okay, I won't enter any new evidence on that one. I've got no further questions, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. Mr. Wong, this is owned by Manitoba Housing.
Yes.
Okay. So the question came up, the rents are geared to the applicants or the tenants' income?
That might have been mentioned, but I didn't mention anything about the rent geared towards income.
No. So you don't know that, eh?
No.
Okay. All right. Mr. Story, your presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Mr. Leonardo, just as we're talking about it, of course, there is that large Manitoba housing property downtown. It was on Smith Street. It did indeed sell to the private market. There was a full gut job. And the reason why we don't use those sales is because we have direction from the municipal board saying that properties purchased with the intention to renovate, constitute a different economic opportunity. So that cap rate is based on this, exactly as you're saying. It's a different opportunity because it's you're buying something and raising the rent, so you're not buying the income in place. But that's a good comment. And we don't use those sales in our cap rate tables either. So
Question.
oh, sorry. Okay. Just wanted to, while it was hanging in the air, just wanted to mention it. But thanks. Okay, so we are at Country Club Boulevard. It's a 13-story high-rise. It's in the St. James Assiniboia area. It's south of Portage, between McVeigh and Portage. It is indeed subsidized social housing. It tends to the needs of low-income seniors. It was built in 1976. Total gross floor area is approximately 69,583 square feet, and it does have 82 suites that are 420 square feet. That's very, very small by today's standards, but not atypical from what we see in social housing. The mandate of these providers is indeed to provide as much housing as possible. So we will typically see much smaller units in these properties. There are 24 suites that are 1-bedroom, and they are at 627 square feet. They are rent geared to income. Typically, RGI is 30% of the tenant's income. So the rents would not be a function of the market, but rather based on the gear to income. So we don't use the actuals. We use a function of CMHC. Now the assessor has suggested that these rents are low, but I don't know that the model is necessarily depressing these rents based on the suite size. We have to consider the very, very small suites and the lack of parking would be a consideration. So ultimately, we don't have full statements on expenses here. 55.8% seems about right for a property of this age. Typically in low-income tenancy, as a general observation, I will say that the expenses tend to run a little higher. So I don't know that it's fair comment that the assessor has suggested that the model has adjusted these expenses upward. They are typically what we would expect to see in low-income tenancy, and the rents are we've accepted them, but we've captured the risk in the cap rate. So our baseline cap rate would be 5.5%. In this case, we've adjusted a half point to 6%, which I think is reasonable. So ultimately, and just again, we have a condition that when these properties are built, they're built to we'll call it a utility grade or a more basic standard than properties that are meant to compete in the open market. We have something of an advanced stage here at properties 47 years old. We don't, again, have a history of economic profit, and we have almost 77% bachelor suites. Now, in this day and age, what we're seeing in terms of tenant preferences is a skew towards larger suites and more amenities. Again, this is a very, very basic building meant to tend to the shelter needs of low-income seniors. So ultimately, Mr. Therian, you're absolutely right. We're accepting the net operating income, but we have adjusted our cap rate above and beyond what we'll call a typical market cap. We've applied 6%. That leads us to an indicated market value of $6,183,033, which we then round to $6,183,000. So on page 15, just in support of a couple of the comments that I've made, if you go to A&O, that's the support service for older adults, you can see indeed that it is managed by Nathaniel Group. They manage seniors resources, and you can see that the monthly rent for what they're calling bachelor/studio is indeed 30% of gross income, and they are indeed 420 square feet. The 1-bedrooms are similarly 30% of gross income, and they're 627 square feet. Okay, and you can see that that's a seniors asset. I've included a piece for cap rates for affordable housing. I think we've gone through these a number of times. There are board orders that suggest that give us some direction as to how to treat these housing resources. Clearly, they don't trade on the open market for the income in place. So we follow the advice of the board, as well as the text written by Mr. Richard Poulton out of the Appraisal Institute, suggesting the appropriate methodology for these properties is first to determine an appropriate market rent and then adjust upward. So in this case, our adjustments are based on well, what we'll call an incurable suite mix and size, and then lack of parking. We also consider that low income tenancy tends to lead to a higher degree of wear and tear. And all this to say that these properties typically represent a riskier investment to a purchaser. So effectively, I think we've been very fair in applying a cap rate of 6%. It's a half point above what we would typically apply. The assessor, or the models, 5.2% would be more, we would see that in a newer apartment that's amenity rich, and so we think that it's that cap rate that's being applied by the model is indeed out of sorts. So ultimately, accepting all of the parameters by the model, but then adjusting for increased risk, we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed $6,183,000. And with that, I'm open to your questions.
I thank you, sir. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Therian?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marcel, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
I just have one question, Mr. Story.
Yes.
The previous property, same age, almost the same number of units. And you're using on the previous one, the 5.5, but
Yes.
because this is Manitoba housing, you feel as if the 0.5% increase is justified?
Yes, sir. The half point increase is on the lower end. We don't have a locational issue here, but we do have an issue with the suite sizes. We have a serious issue with the suite mix, and we have a parking issue. So with the presence of those three factors, and with some consideration to the fact that the property has not achieved any economic profit since 1976, a half point adjustment is warranted, to be certain, from our perspective.
All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just noticed that the city's at 107 units, and I think you are at 106.
Yes. So yes, and I think I have it in
What
my
happened
brief
there?
here. Yeah, there's a caretaker suite. So you'll see sometimes in these properties there's a 1-2 bedroom suite, but it's physically it is there, but it's used for a resident manager or caretaker.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's no
rent being generated. No.
All right. All right. So your final evaluation is based at 106.
Well, ultimately, yes, it is, but we're agreeing to the NOI. It's simply a cap rate issue to reflect the very specific nature of the property. Yeah.
All right. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
No, I think we're good, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Are you okay to do another one, or do you want to have a 5-minute or 10-minute break?
I'm good either way.
Mr. Wong?
Let's have a short break.
All right.
Okay,
Let's have,
that's fine.
okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break. So we'll be back at 10:10. Thanks, Jazz. Okay, we'll call the hearing back to order. And the next order of business is 479 Ainsley Street. So Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready, you can take us through that property.
Okay, the subject property is 479 Ainsley Street. The file number is 22-3146. The roll number is 070-755-42000. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is $2,996,000. This is a residential apartment that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1966, and it has 26 units with 24 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's close to the Morey Street, the Morey Bridge, and Portage Avenue. On page 4 are some interior pictures of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. The model's estimated net operating income is $154,000, capped at 5.5%. The estimated value is $2,996,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 7 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. To stabilize their income, I used their 2020 income at 307,000, and I averaged their expenses from 2019 and 2020. You can see that I didn't use 2017 or 18 because the repair and maintenance was fairly high per unit was fairly high for 2017 and 18 at 3,000 and 4,100 per unit. But the repair and maintenance for 2019 and 2020 was reasonable. So using their expenses from 2019 and 2020, their net operating income is 161,000, which is about 7,000 higher than what the model is estimated at 154,000. On page 8 and 9 is information on how we derived our cap rates with some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. And the remainder of my brief are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. So to conclude, the model rent and cap rate are supported by the market, and their actual NOI after adjusting for those years with higher repair and maintenance, their actual NOI supports the model NOI. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 2,996,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story?
Yes, thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Wong, just very quickly. Okay, so this property is built in 1966 and it's been applied an effective year of 1966. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and okay, so and just very quickly, you'd mentioned on page 7 that you'd looked at the income and expenses and you've done a summary, but just to be very clear, those are not stabilized expenses, right? You've used the same, it looks like you've used the same expenses for every year there, 36,503. So they're not, just to be fair, they're not stabilized, correct?
They're stabilized using a $1,404 repair and maintenance.
Okay, so it's not stabilized based on the actual submissions. It's based on an estimate that you're using. Is that correct?
Well, if you look at aside from the adjustment to the repair and maintenance, it is their actual expenses.
Well, hold on. In 18, they're recording expenses of 195. In 19, it's 164. 2020, it's 164. So that 146, I'm a little confused by that, but okay, that's fine. But ultimately, you've not made an adjustment. It's the assessed value that we're dealing with is indeed model derived, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that their actual income and expenses support the model's net operating income.
Okay, I'll leave those comments to my presentation, but cap rates. So we're going to have a slight issue on NOI, but it's mainly in the cap rate. So on page 8, I believe the city is suggesting that all cap rates, whether they be high rise, low rise, quality A or quality B, fall within the same 20th and 80th percentile. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
And can we agree, though, that CBRE at a minimum looks to what they're calling investment grade low rise B, and they're suggesting no less than 5.5 based on your evidence. Is that correct?
That's their cap rates.
Okay. All right. And I think just in terms of, we've gone through cap rates for this whole cycle, but I think we're generally in agreement with Corydon and Maryland, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. And those are at 5.5 and 5.74?
I think there were a couple cap rates that we calculated that are similar to what Altus has calculated, but there are also cap rates that we calculated that are noticeably different than what Altus has calculated.
Right, and just not to belabor this, but there's no calculations in evidence, correct?
We didn't provide the calculations, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
I thank you. Mr. Therian?
Yes, a question I had before. Any record of inspections or condition of this building?
I don't believe so. Like, that's why it appears that there might have been some renovation work done to it. But at the same time, we haven't applied a effective year bill. So I don't believe that we've inspected in a while.
So are you speculating that there were renovations made, or is there something in the file that says there were?
Oh, no, just, I'm just looking at the pictures on page 4.
Yeah, well, I looked at those. They look quite nice, but it's basic, I guess, but pretty roomy from what I can see. But I was trying to get a better handle on what the record showed at the city plus the condition.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we've inspected in a while. But like I said, the pictures on page 4, they seem to indicate at the very least some refurbishment. And the exterior picture on page 3 indicates the windows have been done. So I think there has been some work done.
Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank you, sir. Marcel?
I've got no questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
All right, I don't think I do either. Let me just have a look here. No. Mr. Story, your presentation?
Yes, thank you, sir. So as we've established here, we're on the east side of Ainslie. This is the southeast corner of Ainslie and Ness. Excuse me, again, we're in St. James. It's a 2.5-story walk-up. It's built in 1966. Regarding condition, we would consider this property to be in good condition, no adjustments necessary for condition. I will caution though, the photos, they look great, but those are staged marketing photos. But we're not suggesting the property is in poor condition. It does appear to be in good shape. So ultimately, we are, just to fast forward here, we are using a cap rate of 5.5%. And once again, we have performed a stabilized analysis of the property. You'll see that our rents are slightly higher than the assessor, and our effective gross income certainly becomes higher once we add for laundry and parking. With those higher rents comes something of an elevated vacancy, some small consideration for vacancy and or collection loss, I should say, for bad debts and collection. However, ultimately, our effective gross income is higher than the assessor. We calculate the expenses as $157,484. We've stabilized the R&M at $1,753 per door. Everything in terms of the inputs that we've used here when we do a secondary check on the that column between subject stabilized percentage per square foot. Those metrics are exactly what we would expect to see here. Nothing is out of the ordinary. In fact, the utilities for a property of this age appear to be slightly on the low side, but everything else appears to be well in order. So ultimately, the actual expenses, once stabilized, calculate to 50.9%, giving us an NOI of $151,632. Very close to the assessor's model, but again, we're using actuals. That 5.15 cap rate is far too low for a property of this vintage, so we are indeed using 5.5%. Now, once again, on page 11, we have our R&M breakdown, and we've included it for you. We'll show you how we get to $1,753 per door. And Mr. Wong, you'd asked me in the previous, maybe I didn't process your question properly, but I think you'd asked why we use appliance replacement as R&M as opposed to CapEx. And just, if you look at this very closely, once again, it's not a huge issue, but we're using $98 per door. And we do have a max allowance. I don't think I mentioned that, and I apologize. If you see on the far right there, we allow $225 per door. And our R&M study, just to give you some background, is based on interviews with property managers and getting a real understanding of what their expectations are in terms of R&M or CapEx. And I suppose the ultimately, just to boil it down, the reason why we wouldn't consider appliance repair maintenance in CapEx is if you were replacing all of the appliances in a building, then sure, you'd be looking at categorizing that as CapEx. But when we're looking at general, call it wear and tear, that would fall under the banner, so to speak, of R&M. So just want to make sure I'm clear on that point for the last property and for this one and for the properties going forward. That is our methodology. And again, Mr. Chair, it is included here on page 11. We have a full breakdown. So ultimately, based on that slight adjustment to the NOI and based on the cap rate of, again, a middle of the road cap rate of 5.5%. Now, it is a little bit older than from the property that we had previously looked at that was a market apartment, but it is it's updated to a greater degree than that one from 1976. So if the majority of the properties are built in this vintage and they have no adjustments for any incurable deficiencies or any condition issues or any such thing, 5.5% makes sense. So ultimately, the value that we're requesting for this property is $2,757,000. Again, $2,757,000, and that is again based on an NOI calculated using actuals and a market cap rate of 5.5%. I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Wong, questions of Mr. Story?
No questions.
I thank you. Mr. Therian?
Yes, I just had one, and it was the aspect of the vacancy. The city's at 320, you're at 4.8. Again, I would like you to maybe comment on that, because to me, that probably is the difference between the NOIs, between the both of you. So
Sure.
Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, sir. Absolutely happy to speak to that. So if you just look at, let's say 2017 as a start, you can see that the actual vacancy is 6.4%, and then just 0.1% is allocated to bad debt and collection loss. In 2018, the vacancy is 7%, with half a point for collection loss. That issue seems to be remediated in 19 for a period where it's 2.2 and then 0.3. But then again, we see that they've collected on some of those debts in 2020, and the vacancy is 5.1. So ultimately, the average of that 3-year horizon, I should say, gives us a physical vacancy of 4.8%. And a bad debt and collection loss of 0.1%. So we've used 4.8%. I mentioned before that the citywide average for vacancy at the reference date is 3.8%, and that doesn't account for collection loss. And I will note that in some cases you'll see when rent escalates, that's sometimes when we start to see vacancy creep up. There's always some tension between rising rents and vacancy. So based on the site-specific analysis, 4.8% is the average between 18 and 20. And so yes, you're quite correct. The EGI on line 8 does lead us to 292, where the assessor is at 295. However, when we include laundry and parking, the new EGI on line 13 of ours is 309,116, where the assessor is 295,981. So ultimately, when we include the parking and laundry and any miscellaneous income, our effective gross income is indeed higher, but the justification or the reasoning behind applying the 4.8 on that top line is indeed based on the fact that there is some elevated vacancy in this property between the years 17 and 20.
Do you have any idea why there is this sort of fluctuation in the vacancy rate? I'm trying to.
Sure.
2019's got 2.2, and then we're jumping up to 5.1.
Yeah.
So could you maybe say a little more about that for me, please?
Yeah, I would be, to be fair, I would be speculating, but I suppose if we look at it from a proportionate standpoint, if we have 26 units, to get to 5 to 7% vacancy is not it's not a huge amount of units. I would suspect, and again, sir, I'd be speculating, but I would suspect that as the rental rates increase, and you can see 17, 18, 19, there are rental increases. There are no discounts. So perhaps that is my best guess. I haven't investigated that specific question. It's a good one, but I would suspect that it has to do with rising rental rates. So if we are achieving rents that are somewhat on the higher end for this property, then we would typically expect some a higher vacancy potentially, and the opposite of that is true as well. When we have properties that are marketed at as a discount, or if that's the proposition that the rents are lower, then we would expect to see lower vacancy. So we're using actuals, and my best guess is that it would have something to do with those rising rents, but I can't say for certain. That would be my estimation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Therian. Marcel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jared, my question, because the city always uses this model, which they don't seem to want to give us how they exactly come up with it.
Yep.
And we never get the answers, but you've got a sort of a model driven effect when you said you do a review of the R&Ms.
Yes.
Have you ever given us the numbers on those reviews? Because the review on the R&Ms, basically when we're looking at the older buildings like 1966, like this one, they seem to be coming in beyond the 50%.
Right, and that's what we would typically expect to see. Yeah, but
you've never showed us the charts on that, on how you've done the reviews.
Oh, interesting.
Do you have those available?
That's a good question. I think, I don't want to, I'm careful not to misspeak, but I think that in the previous cycle we may have had an R&M study. We have to be careful though, because each property is site specific. So I'm careful not to say, well, the R&M per door ought to be this, because everything is every function of our analysis is interrelated in some way. I mean, if you have a higher R&M, typically the rents will be higher. You might have higher vacancy. So it's difficult, I suppose. Well, short answer, no, we haven't submitted an R&M study, a universal study. However, each property, so on page 11, this is a site-specific R&M study. So it's not universal to the entirety of the market, but rather to the individual property that we're reviewing. So, and it isn't to be fair, it isn't modeled. It is based on the actual submissions and the recorded income and expenses of the owners. So it's a good question though. Might be something that we do going forward, but I think it is valuable to look at an R&M study on a per, on a site-specific basis, as opposed to avoid distortion of looking at a universal study, perhaps. But yeah, but it's a good comment. I appreciate it.
But you have to agree that that's basically what the model from the city is that universal, and it does not take those other things into consideration.
Yeah, to be fair, the city's model is a bit of a mystery to me. I don't know exactly how it works. So I do rely on looking at the actuals on a site-specific basis. But I don't know what, I guess, just to be fair, I don't know what assumptions or sort of reactions the model has based on certain inputs. I have no idea.
It's two of us. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think it would be almost like a rule of thumb that if you're looking at buildings like this or apartment buildings around that age, expenses run at 50%, 55%. It's like a rule of thumb.
It's like a natural fact. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's site specific when you boil it down. But as a ballpark figure, rule of thumb, they should be around 50, 55, something like that. Depends on depends on the management, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
and what exactly they're doing.
Yeah. I would agree with
Anyways, yeah. So, summation, either party?
Yeah, just I guess with all the talk about the model and maybe what goes into the model and what comes out of the model, it's like there's an implication that I guess something is hidden, and that we might be after higher values, but I don't think that's the case. Like basically the models they do meet statistical standards in the sense that the estimates of value, they're actually measured against sales in the marketplace, and they actually measure very accurately against sales in the marketplace. So the models themselves, in my view, in my experience, they are fairly accurate. They are reasonable, and whereas I'm not sure if other approaches to value have been reconciled in any sort of way, but all the values that the model produces have been reconciled against actual sale prices, and so that's my experience with the model, and I guess I just wanted to let everyone know that.
And just not to put too fine a point on this, Mr. Chair, but just in summation, I would ask that the panel give weighted consideration to an actual site-specific analysis of the income and expenses being recorded by the owner on a per property site-specific basis. And I thank you.
I thank you. Let's press on to 2425 Portage Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready. I just have one question, Mr. Wong. In your presentation that you're going to do, you originally had 3,517,000, which was revised to 3,048,000. My question to you is, what went out to the owner at the time of appeal?
3,517,000.
All right. All right. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, the subject property is 2425 Portage Avenue. The file number is 22-3421. The roll number is 070-607-43000. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is 3,517,000. This is a residential apartment that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1955, and there's 25 suites with 16 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location, once again near Portage and Morier Street. On page 4 are some interior pictures of the subject property. It appears to have been renovated. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. The model has estimated the net operating income to be 184,000 and capped at 5.25%. We have an estimated market value of 3,517,000. On page 4 are some rent comparables showing that the model rents are supported by the market. On page 7, on the top of page 7 are some repair and maintenance comparables, with the average being 1,206. That's there because if you look at the repair and maintenance for the subject property, you can see at the bottom of the middle chart, the repair and maintenance for 2017 was $10,000, and then 3,200 for 2018, and 3,500 for 2019, and 2,700 for 2020. All those repair and maintenance figures, they are higher than what I normally see in terms of repair and maintenance per unit. So I'm taking out their actual repair and maintenance, which appears to include capital, and I'm putting in a market repair and maintenance figure of 1,206. So after adjusting for their higher repair and maintenance, I've taken their 2020 income of 292,000 and average their expenses from 2019 to 2020 at 132,000, and they're giving a net operating income of 160,000. that 160,000 is lower than what the model has estimated at 184,000. So I'm recommending a revised value based off of that lower net operating income. So the revised value is on the bottom of my page 7 at 3,048,000. And on page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 9 are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. Once again, 1745 Henderson was fully renovated and it capped at 4.28%. So this supports the model's cap rate at 5.25%. The remainder of my brief is the income and expenses submitted by the owner. So in conclusion, the model rent and the model cap rate is supported by the market, and the revised NOI is supported by their actual NOI after adjusting for their higher repair and maintenance. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $3,048,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, and just I would like to proceed. Thank you for looking at this, Mr. Wong, but we still have some work to do on this one, but thank you. So this property was built in 1955 and there's been no effective year built applied by the city. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, we've got some marketing photos. Those are staged photos as well. That's fine. Now, hold on. I'm just going to, so I'll deal with the new value that you have on page 7. Okay. Just first off, the R&M comparables, are those, okay, that's the year built. Are there any effective year builts on those properties? Have those been adjusted?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But can you confirm that those are true to their vintage? Similar to this,
well,
to the,
I mean, yeah. even if they were renovated, the subject property appears to be renovated. Okay.
And the R&M, is that stabilized over a number of years, or where does that figure come from?
It's the year prior to the assessment year.
Okay. So not stabilized over a horizon of, let's say, 3 or 5 years or something like that.
Could be
right?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. And so then it's not stabilized if it's 1 year, it's just, okay. And that's based on your assumptions, but there's no calculations supporting those figures. Is that a fair comment?
They have not been presented, no.
Okay. Okay. And well, I think I'll leave my comments for now. I guess just one thing, that cap rate of 5.25 for a building of this vintage, does that not strike you as extremely low? It's built in 1950s.
Well, I mean, 1745 Henderson was built in 1974. It's been fully renovated and it capped at 4.28%. So I actually think that maybe the 5.25 is well supported. It could be lower.
Okay. Oh, okay. And for Henderson, again, you don't know. You think it's a share sale, but you don't know if it included any land, and you don't have any calculation showing your assumptions that were made to come to that cap rate, correct?
No, this property was presented by another applicant, and so I would think that it is a fair market sale.
Okay, Mr. Chair, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Therian.
Yes, well, I have my questions again on being renovated. Is that speculation on your part? I mean, I looked at the pictures, but what does the record at the city show?
The thing is, the records that we show, I don't think it's been inspected, because, like I said, it appears to be renovated. If it was, if we did inspect it and reflected certain renovations, we probably would apply an effective year to it. And because we haven't applied an effective year to it, leads me to think that we haven't taken a look at it yet.
Okay, and this is all model driven?
I believe so, yes.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank you, Marcel.
I've got no questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, something strikes me as being a little amiss here. When the assessment first goes out and you have a value of 3.5 million and the owner decides to appeal, does he get further information in regards to the reduction?
No,
Or
this reduction, the original 3.5 million is the model value that went out. And this 3,448,000 is me reviewing the property here in appeal.
Yeah, but you know, it's a little misleading because he files an appeal with a value of 3.5.
Yes.
So do you think that is correct? I mean,
Well,
I'm
if
just,
I would,
I'm just looking in regards to if I'm the owner and I file an appeal of
Yes.
3.5, and
yes,
then I get somebody, I hire somebody to represent me,
Yep.
and the city comes back and says, oh, the revised figure is $500,000 lower. So how does the client feel? Or
well,
the-
I'm pretty sure the client wouldn't. I'm pretty sure the client wouldn't feel very good.
Yeah,
The thing is the model it estimates value across the whole city. Some of the value estimates might be a little bit high in this case, estimate is a little bit high in this case. But the thing is,
I think that's a stretch in regards to might be a little high. $500,000 is $500,000.
it is. There are some estimates by the model that are high, but there are also values that are low, that are below what.
Well,
it's just that we don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like the model is overestimating values on all the properties in Winnipeg. It is kind of averaging it, and some of them might be a little bit overestimated, but some of them might be underestimated. We don't hear about the people that are underestimated in terms of value, but we do hear about. and even we even hear from property owners that are underestimated in value, because they feel it should be lower.
It depends who's moving the brush, I guess, eh?
Yeah, but I'd like to think that like we try to be as fair and as accurate as we can be.
Okay, Mr. Wong, it's completely debatable. So let's just not go there. I thought I'd bring that up. And
Mr. Chair, can you bring this committee back to order, Mr. Chair? This debating back and forth is getting on my nerves.
All right. Okay. Mr. Story, your presentation, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so here we are at 2425 Portage Avenue. We have a 2.5-story walk-up. It has a basement. It's on the northeast corner of Portage and Vernon Road. This is Silver Heights. It was built in 1955. We're not suggesting that the condition is poor or any such thing. It would be considered to be in good condition. Total gross floor area is 23,028 square feet. It has 11 one-bedroom suites, 11 two-bedroom suites, for a total of 22 suites. And there are 16 outdoor parking stalls reported on the site. It's a rectangular or generally rectangular site, and it is zoned RMFL, so multifamily large, and the site size is about 16,221 square feet. Got some exterior photos on page 4 and 5, and it is in that stretch of Portage that's fairly competitive with some of these older apartment blocks. There's blocks and blocks of older apartments from the 50s through the 70s. Now, in terms of our cap rate, for properties in the cohortship between 1946 and 1959, for all properties, we typically apply a cap rate of 5.75%, which is what we've applied here today. It is a bit older, so We've talked about the 5.5s for the properties in the 60s and 70s. Now we're getting into the 1950s, so we do have to consider the property is well, it's a little older than the others that we've looked at, and that does fall within that group. So ultimately, if you follow me to page 10, you can see that I suppose the assessor has changed the inputs now, but from our you're quite right, Mr. Merritt, when we see the first assessment, the column on the right is what we're presented with. So this is what we see. The city model suggesting 338, 340, and we can show you that the actual rents at the reference date are $298 and $38. Vacancy in this property runs fairly high. You can see it's going from 5.3% to 13.6%. That is higher than what we would expect to see, but these are actuals. There is some consideration for collection loss. We haven't made an adjustment there, but we have used the average 18 through 20 vacancy at 7.4%. We've included the laundry income. We've included the parking income. Now those are based on the most current year. And then we've again stabilized the actual expenses. So if you look through these again, there's nothing here that strikes me as being out of sorts. The utilities run low at 9.4%. However, I suppose if you have a higher vacancy, that makes sense. R&M is $2,200 per door. That's running a touch high, but again, we mentioned this in the previous file. For these older properties, you would expect to see something in that 50 to 55%, and here we are squarely in that range at 54.1%. Our NOI is then calculated at 132,978 with a cap rate of 5.75. We come to an indicated market value of 2,312,655, which we then round to 2,313,000. Page 11. Once again, shows our R&M stabilization. It is on the higher side at $2,200, but it's not out of bounds by any means. It's simply on the higher side, and it is an older property, so that makes sense. All of those inputs are itemized for you. You can review them, but that is how we've determined that R&M per door. And again, just to zoom out and put things into context, we are seeing expenses of 54% once stabilized. You can see over the years they've been much higher. So there's some issues in terms of the expenses, but once we stabilize it, we come to a figure that makes sense at $2,313,000. That initial value was clearly far too high. We're going to suggest that the revised value is also too high. The balance of the brief includes that initial city valuation that we talked about, Mr. Merritt, on page 14. You can see that's what's presented to the owner. That's what they see when the initial value is added to the roll. That's what we see in the online. Then I have the income and expense statements from from 15 through 20. That's pages 16, 17, and 18. And then again, we have these marketing photos. They are indeed staged photos. They look good. We're not making any adjustment for condition. Appears to be a sort of a open concept there, and that's fine. The quality would be reflected in the rents, and we've used the actuals. So ultimately, based on, once again, a site-specific analysis of this property, we believe that $2,313,000 is appropriate, and we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed that figure for this cycle. And thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Wong, questions of Mr. Story?
I guess similar to a few properties ago on your page 11, your repair and maintenance chart.
Yep.
So for their flooring replacement, they have 12,000 in 2016 and 35,000 in 2017, and then they have 700 in 2019. And the same thing with their appliance replacement. In 2016, there was nothing for appliance replacement, and then it can go up to 4,000 and 16,000 in 2018.
Okay, so just
and then also for their for their counters and cupboards, there's like 1,000 in 2016 and 54,000 in 2017, and then nothing for 2018. 11,000 for 2019 and nothing for 2020. Like
Yep.
I guess in my view, like a lot of this would be considered capital expenditure because it's not a normal operating expense. But are you saying in your view that it is not capital and you are including it?
Okay, so let's just go through each one here. Flooring replacement. So the 5-year average is 11,792. We allow 500 per door as a max per suite, and that's based on our conversations with owners. For this property, we're using 472. Okay. In terms of the appliance replacement, yes, it is higher in some years, but we're using, well, the average, I should say, is 4,977. We allow up to 225 per door as to account for wear and tear. And just to be very clear, that's $199 per door. So that's not out of bounds. Now, in terms of the counters, cupboards, and carpentry, you mentioned that 54,693. You notice that that's in red. It's in red because it's considered CapEx. So we're using 13,591, and that equates to $133 per door. So where the expense is extraordinary, we will categorize it as CapEx. That's what this color coding is for. I'm sorry if that's not completely clear, but you can see that based on the fact that it's in red, it is considered CapEx. So, and then when you look at that stabilized column per suite, those figures are not out of the norm. In fact, the cupboards and carpentry, we would allow up to $300 per door based on our understanding of the expectations of the larger participants in the market, and we're only using 133. So yeah, I think that this all makes sense. I don't see anything out of bounds here. I appreciate your comment, but when those expenses are extraordinary, we do file them under CapEx. But when they're simply expected wear and tear, we consider them R&M. So I hope that answers your question.
So the flooring replacement at 35,000, you would consider that, you don't consider that capital?
No, we're using 11,792 as an average, and again, that's within our allowable limit of $500 per door, and we're using 472.
Yeah.
So yes, we're using it as R&M. That's correct.
Okay, so you don't consider that capital then?
No, we're considering that regular wear and tear.
Okay, and considering that there has been, it appears that they are doing some work in some years, do you think that might account for some of the vacancy that they're experiencing?
That may be. Well, hold on. Let's have a look here. Sure. So for example, in 2017, they have a very high R&M. That's the only one that strikes me as out of sorts. And the vacancy similarly is very, very high at 13.6%. But again, I will caution, we're using 18, 19, and 20. So we're not considering that very high R&M, nor are we considering that very high vacancy in our calculation. We're showing it to you, but that's a fair comment, but it's not been included in the actual stabilized work of the property.
Well, you're using an average of 7.4%, right?
Yep.
And that 7% is an average of the previous years, correct?
It's an average of 18 through 20.
Of
So
18
yeah,
through 20.
Yeah, so 10.4, 5.3, 6.6. Divide that by 3 and you get 7.4.
So in essence, you are including those years where renovations could be affecting the vacancy levels.
No, I think, okay, so I'll say it again. I think the year where we see renovations affecting, potentially affecting vacancy would be 2017. If you look at line 27, R&M is 204,000. So that's much higher than all the other years. Now, and just to be very clear, we're using $55,000 for our vacancy, or sorry, for our R&M. In 18, it's 89. In 2019, it's 80. Then it's 62. The year where it's extremely high is 2017. That's also the year where the vacancy is extremely high. So in what we'll call normal years, you can see the vacancy runs from 5.3 to 10.4. The average is 7.4. We're not considering collection loss, which would add another third of a point. No, I think we've not used that outlier in our stabilization. I think it's very clear.
Okay, that's all my questions.
I thank you, Mr. Therian.
Have you inspected this property?
No, sir, I have not had the opportunity, but we're not suggesting that it's in anything other than good condition.
No, but I guess what is always difficult here, everybody's speculating that it's like this and it's that and good condition, and the pictures look good anyway, but it's always nice to know if people have been out there to look at it and give us straight goods for what it looks like. So
absolutely.
you
That would be
can't really tell us anything about that then.
No, that would be our preference to visit every property, but sometimes it's we can't get to every single property. But I appreciate the comment. I agree with you. It is best to visit, to have a on the ground report, so to speak. But for the purpose of our report today, we're suggesting that it is in good condition, and the marketing photos would indicate as much. So I think you're correct. It is better to visit the property, but I have not had the opportunity to inspect this one personally. But again, we are suggesting that the quality would be considered good.
Yeah, there's 25 suites, I think. Did you not mention 11 one bed and 11 two bed?
Yes, we
Did
have.
I miss? So must be something a little missing here, but
yeah. So we have 11 and 11.
yeah.
That's what we have on file from the owner. So I'm not sure where the.
There's three bachelors. There's three bachelors.
Well,
they're bachelors.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 bachelors as well. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it's.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
but I was just listening to your comment.
Yes.
And I was trying to see if that made sense.
No, you're correct. I skipped over that by accident. No, it's
Okay,
3
and
bachelors,
I
11
guess,
one. Yeah.
I guess I'm a bit surprised with the mix you have, that the vacancy is high at 7.4, because it's pretty good mix, really.
It's a good
And
mix.
the building looks nice and in good condition, and it's so.
Sure.
I know you did comment on that, but I thought that vacancy was high.
It does appear high, but I will point out though, this stretch of Portage is very, very competitive. There are a ton of apartments, so perhaps that is a factor. I'm not sure, but the vacancy is what it is as reported. The suite mix, yeah, I agree. Although I will say, just to be very fair, folks are looking for properties with, and I suppose the pandemic has exacerbated this a little bit, but it was something that existed before the pandemic. People are looking for larger suites. They're looking for more building amenities. So I guess we have more than 50% bachelor in one bedroom. So it's not, wouldn't be considered ideal necessarily. So that may play in, but again, we haven't made an adjustment for the suite mix, but we do see at the reference date that the tenants universe is showing us that they're looking for greater degrees of amenities and typically larger suites, and that's likely based on the fact that
Renos at 2212. Now I think you did say that is a bit high, but I think you tried to explain this the best you could. But my reaction was it was a bit high.
Yeah.
Anything else to add to that?
Sure. Well, I mean, they are actuals. They are stabilized. They're lower than what's been reported, and it is a property where we've all agreed that it looks to be in good shape. So in order to maintain that and subtend those rents, the owner has to spend a little bit more, and I think we've established too, it's something of a kind of a rule of thumb or a natural kind of fact that in these apartments, as they get older, we would typically expect to see expense ratios in that 55% range, and we do fall in 54%. So yeah, 2,200 a door is on the high side, but it's not out of range. That would be my comment, Mr.
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Therian. Mr. Larando.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no questions at this time.
Okay. I don't think I have any either. So summation, if you wish, gentlemen.
Oh, thank you.
No, I think we're good, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move down the street to 2415 Portage Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
Okay, the subject property is 2415 Portage Avenue. The file number is 22-2775. The roll number is 070-607-46000. This is the roll year is 2023. The assessed value is $3,563,000. This is a residential apartment that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1956, and we have an effective year built of 1974. There are 25 suites with 11 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is an interior photo or interior photos of the subject property from the internet. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. The model is estimated a net operating income of $176,000, capped at 4.95%. The estimated market value is $3,563,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables that support the model rent. On page 7, a little bit under 172,000. The model is estimated approximately 176,000. So I believe that the actual NOI supports the model's net operating income. And on page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 9 is are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. And once again, 1745 Henderson is a renovated property and it capped at 4.28%. So I believe that supports the model's cap rate. On page 11 and 12 is the income statement submitted by the owner, and on page 13 is the permit for interior alterations. So to conclude, the model rent and cap rates are supported by the market, and their actual NOI supports the model net operating income. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $3,563,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, sir, just very quickly. Mr. Wong, this value is simply model derived, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so sorry, you said you believe so. So is there a potential that there was some overwrites in the system, or is this simply developed?
Yeah, some of the properties get reviewed, and if the model is off, there are some overrides.
Okay, and that cap rate of 4.95, just so we're clear, I mean, I understand you've got a table here we don't have any backup to it, but just to be very fair, based on your submission here, the brokers would suggest no less than 5.5%. Is that fair?
That's what the brokers are. Those are the cap rates for those other organizations.
Right, but you've used them in your evidence, right?
Yes.
Okay. You know what, Mr. Chair? That's okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
I thank you. Mr. Therian?
Yes, I see there was a sale in 2013 of $1,975,000, and it looks like a permit was taken out the same year. I'm looking at the permits, and it says here that's on page 13. Doesn't have a very big amount, but it shows that they're gonna work to complete renovation of each suite. but not the mechanical or structural. Have you examined any of this and compared it to your assessment at this stage of the game?
Yeah, this property was inspected by one of my colleagues, and that's why we updated the characteristics for the property, including an effective year to reflect the, I guess, the improved state.
Okay. So that's how it was changed from 1956 to 1974.
Yes.
Okay. The expense rate that you have is 43.63, and the city's at, not the city appellant, is 44.1. So that's pretty close. That's it for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank you. Marcel?
Mr. Wong, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wong, previous buildings, 1976, you were giving anywhere from 5.3 to 5.2. This one's 1974 after being what you call renovated. Why is it so low at 4.95?
I'm not sure exactly why it might be different from, say, the previous property. It could be due to the property being slightly smaller, is what I've noticed, that some of the smaller buildings have lower cap rates. But once again, when you look at the sale of 1745 Henderson, which is a fully renovated property, that one capped out at 4.28%. So I believe that supports the 4.95% that the model has applied in this case.
Okay, but 529 Country Club Boulevard was 5.2. It was in 1976. It's a larger building.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't like your model. But your model seems to be all over the place here.
Well, I think with regard, there might be slight differences in cap rate, but like I said, when you look at all the estimated values that the model has estimated, and you compare them to actual sales, the model checks out very, very well. So,
as Mr. Terrien said, the permits that were taken out were for basically renovations inside. Nothing in the bones was changed. So we've still got a 1956 property here that's been renovated inside with old bones and nothing done to the electrical or the heating systems in it. So I'm just challenging you on this 4.95 when the other ones were at 5.2 and.
Well, the other ones would be tantamount. The other ones, I guess, could be kind of comparing assessments. If you're actually looking at, say, cap rate sales, like I said, the 1745 Henderson is a fully renovated property. It's very stable, and it capped out at 4.28. And so I think the 4.28 kind of substantiates either a 4.9 or a 5.2. So I don't think we're, I guess, unreasonable in that regard.
Was that Henderson Highway bought to renovate?
Pardon me?
Was that Henderson Highway? Was it bought to renovate? Has it been renovated?
No. It was bought after renovation.
Okay, thank you. I've got no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and again, and I in my haste, I didn't mention this permit, but just to put things into context, Mr. Lorando and Mr. Terrien, you're both quite correct. Nothing was done to the bones of this building, and that's $8,000 per door 9 years ago. So just contextualize that, please. Ultimately, we have a property at 2415 Portage Avenue. It was indeed built in 1956. It is in good condition. I do note that the parking coverage on a per suite basis is not, it's not favorable. We have 11 stalls with 25 suites. That would be considered a negative. Okay, just to point that out. It has 16 one-bedroom suites and 9 two-bedroom suites for a total of 25 suites. We do note in our evidence that the property did undergo renovations in October of 2013, and that the city effectively or subsequently changed the effective age to 1974. The site's a parallelogram, and it is zoned RMFL. Now, this one I had some issues with regarding the cap rate, because yes, the interior is renovated. It is to a, it's not true to its vintage of 1955 or so. However, we have to consider the bones of the building. That's the actual built asset. We have in this situation erred on the side of caution, and we have used a 5.5 cap, which would be commensurate with that 1974 variance. Though I did sort of go back and forth, and I'm trying to be very reasonable. I think that 5.5 is conservative, but yeah, we have to definitely consider that the bones of this building are from the mid 1950s. Once again, we have relied on the actuals. If you follow me, please, to page, where are we here? Page 10. As you've seen a number of times today, we've used the actuals. Vacancy is reasonably low in this building, so we have used that very low, the lower end of the market vacancy at 3.2%. So that's fine. Our EGI, once we add the laundry, parking, and miscellaneous income, is 301,182. And I'll note again, we talked about discounts a little bit. This owner is permitted to charge 314,714. However, the market will only bear 298,184. So there is a discount in that in line 2. There's been discounts since 2017. Again, this is a fairly competitive stretch of apartment buildings, so that makes sense. In terms of our expenses, now because they had spent some money on this property from presumably from acquisition in 13 and then up to 17, we have a reasonably low expense ratio calculated at 44.1, and that R&M is exceptionally low at $745 per suite, but that is what they're reporting. We have stabilized it as we would any other apartment, and that is the figure that we're using. So, and that again, that's likely based on the fact that there has been renovations in the more modern era, let's say. So ultimately, our net operating income is 168,259. It's below what the model is suggesting. That cap rate of 4.95 is far too low. We're suggesting 5.5%, though perhaps 5.75% would make sense, but we are trying to be fair and recognize the work that's been done cosmetically and to the interior since acquisition. So ultimately, we feel very, very comfortable at a value of $3,059,000. As per most of my briefs here today, you'll see we have the same sort of income and expense information with our red notes, which inform our position for the R&M submission. And then the marketing photos are included on page 25. You can see they look to be pretty good. That's what they look like on the interior. That's how they're staged, frankly, and these are the marketing photos. But we feel very comfortable with the value that we're proposing here today at $3,059,000. And again, that is based on actuals and using a more realistic market cap rate of 5.5%. And with that, I thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Questions of Mr. Story?
No questions.
Mr. Therian?
I just had one. I'm looking at the discounts that every year keeps going up.
Yeah.
2017 is 6703, and at 2020 we're at 16530. I think you've tried to give us an explanation of that it's competitive, but everything is competitive in this day and age. So any additional reasons why you think it's going up like this? You stabilized it at 12,973, I believe. Yeah, and that changed the potential market by about brought it about to 310.
Sure. So okay, so here's how all of this sort of works. relatively. So in 2017, you can see, as you've quite rightly pointed out, their discount is 6,703. So all of these properties, and this, thank you for asking this. This gives me a reason to talk about the some of the issues I have with using rental comparables. When you use a rental comparable, all of these properties of a certain vintage are under the umbrella of the RTB. So they're only permitted to charge a certain rental rate. So in this case, that top line, that's what they're permitted to charge. And you can see every year it is going up. In 17, 293, in 18, 300. So there's escalation in what they are permitted to charge. But there's also, let's call it, some pushback from tenants of what the market is willing to bear, what the market is willing to pay, frankly. So in order to keep those rental increases, they have to discount those rents back to what the folks will actually pay. So they are permitted in 2020 to charge 314,714, but the market will only bear 298,184. If you watch that line 3 of potential market gross rents, you can see there is indeed rental escalation every year, 286, 290, 295, 298. But you'll see that what the market is willing to bear is not keeping pace with what they're permitted to charge. So that delta, that discount is based on what they're actually receiving versus what they're permitted to charge based on the RTB guidelines. So that figure that we're using of 298,184 is indeed what they're collecting in 2020, though they're permitted to charge a higher rate. The tenants are only willing to pay 298,184. So I hope that answers your question, but that's the it's a tension between what they're permitted to charge and what the market is willing to bear.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you. Marcel?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got no questions.
All right. Summation, either party?
Oh, thank you.
I think we're good, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let's press on and we'll go to 360 Lodge Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready, you can take us through your presentation.
Okay, the subject property is 360 Lodge Avenue. The file number is 22-1860. The roll number is 075-691-34310. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is 12,913,000. This is a residential apartment that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2017, and it has 42 suites with 42 indoor parking stalls and 35 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Once again, we're located near Portage Avenue and Morey. On page 4 are some interior pictures of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. The model's estimated net operating income is $548,000, capped at 4.25%. The estimated market value is $12,913,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables, showing that we're in line with what's in the market. On page 7 is a summary of their income and expenses. They included some interest income and some interest expenses, which we don't include for calculating the net operating income. So after removing those interest items, their net operating income is $592,000, which is higher than what the model is estimated at $548,000. So their actual net operating income supports the model. On page 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And on page 9 are some cap rate sales. Once again, the two properties of 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson have cap rates of 4.79% and 4.28%. So the model's 4.25 is in that range, and so it is supported by the market. So the model rent and the model cap rate are supported by the market, and their actual NOI is about 40,000 higher than what the model is estimated. So I believe that their actual NOI more than supports the model. And so I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 12,913,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story.
Yes, just a few questions, Mr. Chair, and this is going to be a cap rate issue, so I'll limit my questions to that matter. Mr. Wong, again, you've mentioned 1745 Henderson, but just to be very fair, there's nothing here in evidence to support that cap rate, and just if I'm understanding you, there was it was a share sale, and we don't know if there's non-realty items included, and we also don't know if there's any consideration for the excess or surplus land. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about any of that, but once again, this was presented in evidence by another applicant, so
Okay.
I believe it to be a normal sale.
And just to put this into context, we're in the last week of hearings here, and this property has just shown up, and there's no calculations to support it, correct? This is a new entry?
We do have calculations. All these cap rate sales have been stabilized in a similar manner. We have not presented those stabilizations, no.
Okay, and that's okay. So okay. So and then 2390 McPhillips, that's a new property. Can we agree that at the time of purchase, those rents were below market? Those were low rents, correct?
I don't believe so.
So you haven't seen the evidence suggesting that they were indeed below the CMHC averages?
What CMHC averages, maybe they were higher, but what we do know is that the amount of rent and expenses that they collected were consistent for the 3 years prior to the sale, and that's the information that we used to stabilize that property.
Okay, and upon acquisition by a real estate investment trust, so a very knowledgeable purchaser, they raised the rents, right? Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
You're not aware that the rents were raised upon acquisition of the Lady Joyce on McPhillips?
If you have any pre-referenced information to support that, I suggest that you put it in there.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we've all seen that information, but okay, that's fine. So, but you're suggesting that upon acquisition by the real estate investment trust that purchased that property, you're saying that you're not aware that they raised the rents upon acquisition?
I am not sure. I'm saying that the information available right up to the point of sale is what we use to stabilize that property. The vendor, in selling the property, indicated a cap rate of 4.75%. So I don't believe that we are that far off.
They indicated that cap rate where?
In their brochure.
Okay, so in that brochure, that was a marketing circular, that 4.75 was based on a sale price of $1 million higher than what they achieved, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then if you use the price that they actually achieved, that cap rate becomes higher, does it not? Mathematically.
If you're looking at it from they used the whole they used I guess a lot of information to calculate the 4.75. If you're just making one adjustment in terms of the sale price, I don't believe that would be very accurate.
No,
and
I'm not making one adjustment. I'm saying to you that the 4.75 that you've referenced is based on the presumption that they would sell it for $20.4 million, and they sold it for 19.4. So I'm not making an adjustment. I'm saying that if you're talking about the marketing circular, the NOI that they put to market Yes, I agree with you. It would be 4.75 if they had achieved $20.4 million. However,
Okay.
they achieved 19.4, correct?
Would you like me to send our stabilization for 2390 McPhillips right now? I will send it to you right now.
No, I'm just asking you a question. It's just a basic mathematical question. If you're using that NOI that you referenced in the circular, and you take that sale price, that cap rate is no longer 4.75. It's higher, correct?
I'm just going to say that we've stabilized 2390 McPhillips using their actual income and expenses from right up to the sale. If you want to make some sort of guesstimate by increasing.
No, it's not a guesstimate. We know that those rents were raised right after acquisition, and we know that at the reference date, those rents were below CMHC. So I guess I'm asking you, did you not put any consideration to the fact that a real estate investment, a knowledgeable institutional investor purchased this property seeing some topside potential? And if you do increase those rents and hold everything else constant, mathematically, that cap rate becomes much higher than what you're suggesting.
It is
correct?
It is difficult for us to know what the purchaser was thinking. What we do know is what they bought it for, and what we do know is what the stabilized net operating income was, and that's how we calculated the 4.79%. That's what we do know.
Okay, but you also know that those rents were raised upon acquisition, so you do know that they bought that property with some topside potential, correct?
I do not. I'm not sure.
Okay, those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Therian?
Yeah, I only have one question. I look at page 8 and I've had that concern before. The lowest rate you show is 480 for a low rise, and I see you're at 4.25. So I guess you've tried to explain the best you could how you arrived at your 4. At the evidence on page 8, I do have that question.
Okay.
Did you want to comment further or not?
Just that the lowest that we have is the 4.8, but that's at the 20th percentile. There are some that are below 4.8, which is the lowest 20th percentile. So this property falls into that category. We also have properties that are, say, at the 80th percentile, it's 5.6. We also have cap rates that are higher than 5.6. I've seen, I guess, a more recent property. It was a property that was at 6.9. So there are some properties that are higher than the 5.6, and there are some properties that we have that are lower than the 4.8, but the majority of them fall between 4.8 and 5.6 is what that chart is showing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you. Marcel?
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Wong, have you visited this property at all?
I have not. I have not visited the property.
Okay. Based on the pictures, it's quite a nice building, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it is newer, and it is, I would say, above average.
Mm-hmm. There's 39 2-bedrooms and 3 1-bedrooms. And they have indoor parking and they have outdoor parking.
Yeah, it's only 3 floors.
And the cap rate you're using for this property is 4.25.
Yes.
You think that is applicable, or should it be higher, or should it be lower?
I think it is reasonable. Like I said, based off of the the sale of 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson, I believe it is applicable. It is reasonable. And when based off of some of the appraisals that I've seen, I also believe it is reasonable. I mean, some of the cap rates, the applicant has mentioned that whether it be CBRE or Colliers is indicating cap rates sort of no lower than 5%. When I look at appraisals, there are a lot of sales that are below 5%. So that's why I'm basing it off of the information that I've seen, and which it's in line with the 4.8 and the 5.6 percentile that we're showing on page 8. So based off of the appraisals and the information that I've seen, I believe that we are reasonable in this in the 4.25 that has been applied in this case.
All right, I think the explanation is very good. So thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story, your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So here we are at 360 Lodge. Again, this is solely a cap rate issue. I just want to, while we still have the assessor's information open, he did mention something. I just want to point out, this is a very good point, and in our discussion about McPhillips, I didn't mention this, but if we look at the brokers tables, for what we'll call a low rise A, we're seeing nothing lower than a 5 or a 5.25% cap. Now, these are the brokers who are dealing with let's call it the latest and greatest, the better quality properties. So I guess my only suggestion here is this property should be somewhere between a 5 and a 5.25. And I will leave that to you. But ultimately, we've used the actuals in place. This is on page 10. I don't know that the assessor will be arguing about our NOI. It is indeed higher, and it is based on the actuals. So this is, our methodology is consistent. You can see it's a new building, so the R&M, even with a higher quality building, it's at 1,236 per door. We've performed the exact same stabilization methodology that we've submitted to you for most of these properties here today. Our position is that the cap rate ought to be 5.25%. We talked about 2390 McPhillips. I can tell you that property, those rents were indeed below CMHC. When you adjust those rents to CMHC standards and hold all else stable, that cap rate becomes much, much higher than 5%. I believe it's 5.69%. Now, in the previous cycle, we had, we looked to cap rate compression in the market. We had applied 5.25% for the highest and best multifamily properties. This would certainly fall in that upper echelon. These are certainly very, very high quality apartments. There's no doubt about that. The amenities are good. The parking is good. The suite mix, the suite size, everything is good. There is no reason to make any downward adjustment whatsoever. But we note that the cap rate compression is somewhere between 0 and 25 basis points cycle over cycle. So we're suggesting 5.25% for this property, though it may be as low as 5%. We take some direction from the brokers, and we do see, again, that they're suggesting, when they itemize a low rise A, they're suggesting 5.25%. That's consistent with what we're suggesting. Cushman is saying all low rises are 5%. So ultimately, based on these third-party market reports, based on compression in the market, and based on the fact that the only sale that we've reviewed for that are sales of newer properties, well, let's say there's a great deal of conversation around what that cap rate ought to be and the purchaser's motivation, recognizing that there was topside potential. We feel very comfortable at 5.25%. 4.25% is not reasonable, quite frankly. So ultimately, when we're using the actuals, when we stabilize them on a site-specific basis, our NOI is 578,135, and we do believe that 5.25% makes sense. So that leads us to an indicated market value for this property of $12,102, which we then round to $11,012,000. Again, this is all in the cap rate, and we do believe that our position is well supported by the brokers, by our own information, and I think I'll leave it there. But again, we feel very, very comfortable at $11,012,000, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Therian?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Laurando?
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
I think we're
Okay,
good, sir. Thank you.
we're gonna take another 10-minute break.
Sounds good to
And then
me.
we'll deal with the last two, okay? So
Wonderful.
we'll reconvene at 11:48. Call the hearing back to order, and we'll go to number 500 Gagnon Street. So, Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready, and I note that I guess you did
it again.
another revised figure, so the floor is yours, sir.
The subject property is 500 Gagnon Street. The file number is 22-3454. The roll number is 072-055-40100. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is $13,468,000. This is a residential apartment that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1979, but we have it was built in 1979, and we have 96 suites with 116 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's in the west perimeter, just by Portage Avenue. On page 4 are some interior pictures of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. The model's estimated net operating income is $700,000, capped at 5.2%. The estimated market value is $13,468,000. On page 6 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 7 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. To stabilize their income, I used their 2020 income of $1,136,000 and their expenses from 2017 and 2019 at $522,000. I used the expenses from 2017 and 2019 because for the years 2018 and 2020, you can see that there's some refurbishment and windows expense that I feel are capital expenditures. And so I felt that the 2017 and 2019 expense years were more representative of a normal expense year. So using their 2020 income and the expenses from 2017 and 19, their net operating income is $614,000, and that's lower than what the model is estimated at $700,000. So I'm recommending that the value be revised to $11,810,000 based off of an NOI of $614,107. On page 8 and 9 is information on how we derived our cap rates with some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. The remainder of my brief are the income statements supplied by the owner. So the model rent that's been applied and the cap rate is supported by the market, and the revised NOI after adjusting, after considering those higher repair and maintenance figures, their actual NOI supports the model, or sort of supports the revised net operating income. So I ask that you accept the revised value of $11,810,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Story. Mr. Story around?
It is muted.
Mr. Story, you're muted. Looks like-
Okay. Mr. Story?
He's just fixing up his headphones, Chair.
Okay.
Got disconnected.
We can't hear you, Jarrett. No,
Can't see you either.
I can see him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. My lost connection to my headphones. Apologies, folks. Well, glad it happened now and not earlier.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to proceed if that's if
Yeah,
I may.
uh,
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Jared, yeah, we have, we just heard from the assessor.
Yeah, no, I heard everything.
To the
Yeah.
assessor?
Yeah, I heard everything, so we're good.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Wong, can we agree this is a garden style apartment? Is that a fair comment?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And does the model, does the model put any premium on garden style apartments based on the fact that they have multiple buildings? Typically, they're lower quality construction, less efficient use of land. Is that, are you aware if there's any adjustment there?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Just looking at page 4, now can we agree there are indeed some original elements from the 70s in these photos? Is that fair?
I'm not sure. I would just sort of say that it's a normal apartment building.
Okay, that's the first thing that pops out at me is that stove on the top, that top photo. That's well, it's an older iteration of what we'd expect to see. The cabinetry in the washroom on the second page, and then we can also see that baseboard heater underneath the sliding door and the wall-mounted AC. That would be more typical of the 1970s than the present standard, would it not?
Yes.
Okay, and the work up here on page 5, that's simply model derived, correct?
I believe it is.
Okay. I'll leave it there. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Therian.
No, there has been some improvements because I see the floor is a newer, and I'm looking at the bathroom here. So, but you have no record of anything. I know it's a 1979 building. Any other comments that you can make about this? And I always ask about whether it's been inspected, what's in the record, because to me, it's important.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't believe it's been inspected in the last little while, and I don't believe we have any sort of permit information. Yeah, just in terms of that they do spend money on say in 2018, they spent 31,000 on refurbishment, and they spent 47,000 on doors and windows.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you've revised your NOI from 700,000 to 614, so you've actually cut it back about $86,000.
Yes.
Am I doing this correctly here? Okay.
Yeah, everything you see on page 7 is correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank you. Marcel?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Wong, what made you revise your figures?
I revised my figures when I looked at their actual income in preparing for this hearing. They do appear to be their NOI appears to be much lower than what the model has estimated. So I'm making an adjustment to reflect that.
All right. And for a 1979 building, you feel like the cap rate of 5.2 is applicable?
I feel it is applicable. Once again, based off of the sales that I've seen and the appraisals that I've seen, like a lot of the appraisals, they use a lot of cap rates that are below 5%. So the fact that we're at 5.2%, I think is very reasonable.
And the expense ratio of 46% is applicable?
Yes, I believe it is.
All right, I thank you. Mr. Story, your presentation?
Yes, thank you, sir. Okay, so here we are on Gagnon 500. We have a garden style apartment. Now I will point out, I mentioned it at the outset that there are various factors that influence our cap rates. And one of them is is building type and construction. And we actually outline very clearly that garden style, row housing and garden style apartments are typically applied a higher cap rate from our perspective. They have wood frame construction. They have a mix of wooden siding and stucco exteriors. They have multiple buildings, which is not the most efficient use of space. Typically, it's more economically efficient to build up than to build out. And they have individual entrances. Now, these factors create or can create uncertainty in the amount of repair and maintenance and expenses required. So we do apply a slight adjustment to this property based on the fact that it is indeed a garden style apartment. So again, we've used the actuals. Mr. Terrien is quite right. It looks like there's some upgrades to some elements, but there are, based on the marketing photos, and of course the marketing photos will be the sort of the show pieces that they want to show to the market for marketing purposes. Clearly, we have some older elements to be certain. So ultimately, we've used the actuals, and that's on page 10 of my brief. You can see again we have substantial discounts in this property. We are using the actual rents that they are achieving. You can see the vacancy is very, very stable between 4.1 and 4.3%. And just as a sort of mathematical exercise, I've looked at this, and when we have 96 units, a 4.3% vacancy is about 4 units. The assessor's 3.2% is about 3 units. So just to put that into perspective, we're not worlds apart, but that vacancy appears to be consistent. And we have not, I will point out, we have not made any consideration of the bad debts and collection loss, which you can see are present from 17 through 20. If we included them, the vacancy would be about 5.1%, but we've used the physical vacancy only at 4.3. We've included our laundry, parking, and miscellaneous income. And we've stabilized our R&M on a per door basis at $1,327. Everything else appears to be well in line. I do note that their management fee is much higher than what we're using on the stabilized basis. They're saying, between $80,000 and $84,000. We're using 5% as per our normal course of action and as per our methodology that has been applied consistently. Again, the utilities are not running high in this building. R&M is well in line. And for a property of this age, we're using an expense ratio based on the stabilized actuals of 50%. So it comes to 50% on the nose, which is what we would expect to see. So ultimately, our NOI is $576,695. Our cap rate is 5.75%, leading us to an indicated market value of $10,029,486. Again, that cap rate is based on our baseline cap rate of 5.5%. but with some consideration to the fact that this property is indeed garden style, which is less, well, let's say it's less economically efficient. So we do respectfully submit that the value ought not to exceed $10,029,000. The balance of the brief is support for our site-specific analysis and workup that you've been presented with. And I think I'll leave my comments there, but we do respectfully submit that the value ought not to exceed $10,029,000. And I'm happy to take your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Wong, questions?
So why is it that you're increasing the cap rate to 5.75?
Right. So, okay. So I'll go over it again. The we look to building type and construction. So we typically apply an adjustment for row housing and for garden style apartments. And the justification is that those properties are less efficient, and they typically have repairs and expenses that would be less certain than properties that were more typically vertically built, let's say.
Okay.
And they have more buildings on site too, Mr. Wong. That's the other thing I want to just point out very quickly. We have 4 buildings on site here. So 4 sets of building systems, 4 buildings to maintain, as opposed to having all of these units in one vertical tower, for example. So.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Therian.
Yeah, I was looking at your discounts, and I always have questions why sometimes it's stabilized on your income and sometimes it isn't. And in this case, you've used 106, 186, but the 2020 is 94,609. Now, if I rework this on the EGI to some extent, it's close to, well, I could be wrong here, but it certainly increases the EGI by $20,000, maybe a little more. And so I'm trying to I know there's a little bit of a difference on the vacancy, but I've tried to rework the figures on the potential rent and the discounts. So maybe you could comment on that, please?
Yeah. Okay. So just to be very clear, we're using the same methodology with every file where there are discounts. We're using the actual rent that's being achieved in 2020. So I would say, just if you look at that average 18 through 20, that 1.2 less that 106, we're not using that. We're showing that as a calculation. But if you look at subject stabilized, that column, we're using 1,131,000, and that's based on the actual rental income collected in 2020. Yeah. So that's how we do it.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
No problem. No, that's understandable.
I missed that turn there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Marcel?
No questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I just have a couple questions. Mr. Story.
Yes.
You represent this client, and he decided to appeal this based on the original 13.4.
Yes.
Value?
Yeah, that was the original value that was presented to him. Yeah.
Yeah. So when the city come along and, substantially reduced to a value of 11,000,008, what is your feeling?
I think it's still, well, frankly, we've still got a ways to go here. But it's not. Yeah. No, I think that. Yeah. No, I think
he appeals it at the 13.4, and he feels like there should be, a lower value. But I mean, it's, you show up here and then it's reduced a little,
right.
And
so we're using
the actual doing your presentation. Yeah.
No, with that, I appreciate what you're saying, but we're suggesting to you, Mr. Merritt, that that cap rate is is far too low. And even with the adjusted calculation that the assessor has made, we just, in all fairness, we don't think it actually bears resemblance to the actual performance of the property. So again, we've been very consistent in our methodology. We stabilize the expenses into a typical year. We use the most current income. So despite the fact, I mean, it's, yes, the initial value missed the mark, to be certain, but I feel very, very confident that our value is supported. It makes sense, and again, it's all it's supported by the actuals. So yes, I think what you're saying is right. The model missed the mark on this one, but I think that even with that adjustment, I think that our value is more well, it's more reasonable because it's based on the actuals.
So your gross rent,
Yeah.
gross rent is almost the same as the city.
Nope. Our gross rent, our effective gross income.
Gross
Nope.
rent, gross rent,
Our-
gross rent.
Oh,
The difference is your expense compared to the city is $55,000 higher.
Well, okay. Well, hold on for one second. The potential rents, without considering discounts, so what they are legally permitted to charge is $1,226,000. The
Okay.
model initially is $1,350,000. When we factor the fact that there's substantial discounts and they've been present since 2017, as itemized on my workup, they are permitted, or sorry, they are capable of generating 100, 131, 438.
Yeah.
Right, less
That's-
vacancy, and then adding the incidental income, it's 1,136,620. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
so you're even.
yeah.
So you're even.
well, okay,
Both
sure.
with- Okay.
To their new one.
So yeah, on the new one.
On the new one, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the old one. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Sorry,
You gotta
yeah,
look
sorry.
at the new one.
So tell me why your expenses are, $577,590.
Yeah.
Compared to, they're $55,000 higher than the city.
Right, okay, so perfect. So if we look at the insurance, right, that's the actual charge. That's what they're paying for insurance. The management fee is, we calculate it as 5% of the EGI. The owner is reporting it as being much, much higher. They're saying between 80 and 85,000. We're using 5%. That's what we always use. Professional fees are, well, that's an average. So they're as low as 2,000, as high as 8,000. We're using 4,900. We're averaging the office supplies. So we're itemizing all of these based on actuals. I don't know how the model generates that figure. I have no idea. I can tell you though that the way that we generate our figure is by using actuals where appropriate. The most current year for things like insurance and utilities. Utilities will be going up every year, so it wouldn't make sense to average them. It would artificially depress them. And again, we do a secondary check where you can see the subtotal of those utilities is 10.4% of the EGI. That's on the low end. So there's nothing here that gives us any pause or concern. Waste and snow is well in line with what we would expect. And the R&M at $13.27 per door, quite frankly, is fairly low. So ultimately, I can't speak to where the assessors, where their figure comes from, but I can show you that ours is based on the actual submissions by the owner. So it's based on those I&Es. So if ours is higher or lower, we use what's actually being reported and stabilized. So yeah. So I can't really speak to how the assessor gets to their number. I can only speak to our position.
So the other factor that I'm looking at is the cap rate of 5 3/4.
Yes, sir.
And when I look at some of the other ones that you've done, like Greenway, which
Yep.
was built in 1976, You use
5.5,
five and a half.
precisely.
And also the other one on Country Club. Well, you use 6, but
That's social housing with some
Yeah.
considerations. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I just,
Yeah, and just
wanted
to be very clear, Mr. Mayor, the reason why we do apply the adjustment is again because this is a garden style apartment. So we have 4 buildings on site.
yeah,
It's
okay.
wood frame. It's less efficient. So when it comes to row housing or garden apartments, we will typically apply by an adjustment of a quarter point. So that's
more-
our methodology.
More maintenance expense then?
Yes, more maintenance, more uncertainty. Quite simply, there are 4 buildings to maintain as opposed to 1, and it's less economically efficient. It would be more efficient, as you can imagine, to build vertically, as opposed to having all of these buildings on one site. So yes, that is we're very consistent with applying an adjustment for row housing or garden apartments for that specific reason.
All right, I thank you. Summation, either party?
Could I redirect, Mr. Chair? I got a short.
Certainly. Go ahead.
A lot of our expenses that we look at,
Yeah,
seem to fall on the backs of the way the owners are as well. And this owner here always seems to have a higher percentage, but he's got less capital throughout his infrastructure. He seems to take care of a lot of his stuff on a regular basis, and it turns into just expenses rather than capital. Is that correct?
It's a good question. I'd have to look into that more. I don't know. I can't say off the top of my head, but not sure. But to be fair, when I look at this one, it doesn't look like. Again, the interiors look pretty, pretty typical. So it looks like it's maybe more maintenance than it is CapEx. So yeah.
That's what I mean. But he does a good job of doing the maintenance on a regular basis.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Was there a chance for summation? Did we cover that?
Let's
Not
keep
yet.
doing that.
We'll try it again then. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
No, I think we're good, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, let's go to the last one, which is 140 Ferry Road. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
Okay. The subject property is 140 Ferry Road. The file number is 22-2211. The roll number is 070-410-26700. The roll year is 2023, and the assessed value is $7,183,000. This is a residential apartment that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1997, and it has 45 suites with 45 indoor parking stalls and 23 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 are some interior photos of the subject property. On page 5 is a description of the property. It's not your standard apartment block. It is a life lease. So just to read the short description, under a life lease, tenants pay a one-time refundable entrance fee to become a resident of the property, and then a monthly rent fee, which it contributes to the property shared operating expenses or operating costs and taxes. On page 6 is information on some of the suite layouts. Also on some of the rents. You can see the rents. They might range from $11.85 to $15.82 per unit. And at the bottom of page 6, you can see that the average entrance fee is about $6,740. With there being 45 units, the value of the entrance fees is about $2,868,000. If you're using a 3.5% rate of return, the additional income for the property would be about 100,000. On page 7 is information indicating that the number of applicants that are waiting to get into these types of buildings, whether for the subject property at 150 Ferry Road, there's at that time there are 260 applicants waiting. So these types of properties are in high demand. On page 8 is our income valuation summary. See, our average monthly rent is $1,168, whereas their actual rents range from $1,185 to $1,582. But the model's estimated net operating income is $341,000, capped at 4.75%. The estimated market value is $7,183,000. On page 9 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are supported by the market, as well as being supported by their actual rents. On the bottom of page 9 are some expense comparables ranging from 33 to 47%. This supports the model's expense ratio at 44.16%. And on page 10 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their 2020 income is about $778,000, and their expenses are about $778,000, but that included some expenses such as reserve, amortization, interest, and corporate costs. After removing those costs, their expenses are $433,000 for 2020. To stabilize their income, I used their income from 2020 at $778,000 and averaged their expenses at $419,000, giving a net operating income of $358,000, which supports the model's net operating income of $341,000. And this doesn't include any assigning any value to the entrance fees, to the $2.6 million that the tenants had to contribute. If you add that, the additional income would be about $100,000, and so their net operating income could be even higher than what's calculated above. On page 11 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 12 are some cap rate sales. Once again, pointing to 2390 McPhillips at 4.79% and 1745 Henderson at 4.28%. The model cap rate for the subject property is 4.75%. So I believe those two sales support the 4.75% that we've utilized. And also, like when you look at the value per unit of 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson, they're at about, between the two of them, at about $200,000 per unit, and the subject property is assessed at $160,000 per unit. So I believe that those sales support the assessed value at $159,000 per unit. The remaining information is the income statement supplied by the owner. But in conclusion, the sales of 1390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson supports the cap rate, and it also supports the overall valuation. And also, like the model net operating income is supported by their actual net operating income, especially if you attribute any value to their entrance fees. But also the model rent and the expenses are also supported by the market. So considering all that, I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $7,183,000. Ron, you're muted.
Sorry. I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, I do. I have a few questions. So, okay, firstly, Mr. Wong, this is managed by a nonprofit social housing management corporation. Is that correct? SAM Management?
I believe so.
Okay, and just to be very clear, so we're not conflating two things here, you're not, the evaluation here is not based on the going concern value of the life lease or any interest that's being generated, correct? It's simply model derived from a fee simple perspective. Is that fair?
We were looking at it as if it was a market apartment building.
Okay, all right. So we're not considering, and just to be very clear, the way that a life lease works is typically tenants pay something up front in order to keep their rents at a certain level, and then that initial investment is paid back to them minus some fee at the end of their tenure at that in that property, correct?
Yeah, life leases, they pay an entrance fee. It goes towards the cost, and it also makes their rents. It also makes their rents a bit lower.
Right, and there's a reversion of that fee at the end of their tenancy, correct?
They do get it back, yes.
Yeah, okay. And page 4, we can see that this property has a fair bit of what we'll call common area. Is that fair to say?
It appears so.
Okay. And all right. So, and then it's now the other issue with this property is that the suite count, you have 1 bachelor and 44 1-bedrooms. I know you'd mentioned something about the assessment per suite, and you'd considered Henderson and Lady Joyce on McPhillips, but to be very clear, those are market apartments. They're not managed by social housing. They're not life leases, and they have a different suite mix than what you're proposing here, correct?
Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, this property, I think you said you thought that those sales on one next to the Norvilla and then the one on McPhillips supported this value, but those properties are typical market apartments, and they have a very different suite mix than this property. This property has 1 bachelor unit and 44 1-bedrooms, correct?
They are different in that they're not identical, no.
Okay, and in terms of if the cap rate is the numerical expression of risk, then don't you think that having a high preponderance or almost exclusively 1-bedroom units, that the potential for income appreciation over time would be limited?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. All right. And then in terms of the expense comparables, what was the criteria that you used in order to select those properties?
Primarily, they were newer buildings.
What are the suite counts in those properties?
I'm not sure. I would have to look it up.
And okay. And the suite types, is it fair to assume that those are more typical market apartments as opposed to our subject in terms of suite mix?
I'm not sure if there is a typical suite mix.
Oh, okay. Well, certainly not all 1-bedrooms. We can agree on that, right? So be atypical?
Yeah, it's just for example, a lot of some of the buildings are all 2 bedrooms.
Okay. And presumably the rents would be higher then, and the potential for rent escalation would be greater to an investor if they were all indeed 2 bedrooms. Can we agree on that as a general principle?
2 bedrooms typically get higher rents than 1-bedrooms.
Right. Okay. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
I thank you, sir. Mr. Therian?
Yes, did you say that there were 260 applicants waiting? Did I get the right figure?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the issue of 1-bedroom is, well, you know what, if there's 260 applicants that are waiting to get in, there's certainly quite an interest in those properties. Now, in your comparison of the of the cap rate, the examples you gave, were any of those life leases, or they were strict investment properties?
They're all market apartment buildings. As far as I know, I'm not sure of any life leases that have sold.
Okay. Because life leases do work differently. I'm quite familiar with them. I'm not supposed to bring evidence on my part, but I sat on a board already, so I know exactly how they work on a life lease board. So I can see what you've done. The NOI is close to what the appellant has. The cap rate, though, at 475, would you say there's this can be converted obviously to something else, but how attractive would it be for a buyer to buy property like this? And I'd like you to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, I would like, I think that if this were to sell, it would probably sell to another another life lease operation. I don't think they would sell it and then operate it as a regular apartment building. Like I said, there aren't any sales of life leases as far as I know. So, but there are, I guess, many sales of market apartment buildings. And so that's what we've done here, is that we valued it as if it was a market level apartment building, and for which we do have information and sales information for. So I believe that the market information that we provided supports the market valuation that we have. And once again, this, if you look at the pictures of this building, it's just like any other normal apartment building, maybe even nicer. And we valued it at $160,000 per unit. Whereas a property like 2390 McPhillips and 1745 Henderson, they're at about $200,000 per unit for the two of them. So I believe that we've, I guess, valued this at market value fairly, and so I guess that's my view of the subject property.
Yeah, but maybe one point based on what you just said, if the buyer is another social agency, does not affect the group of people that would be interested in buying this? In other words, does not have an effect on the cap rate?
Yeah, you could hypothetically make a case for, or not a case, but make an. I'm not sure how you would be able to substantiate any sort of a cap rate for that life lease without any sort of life lease sales. So whereas any cap rates that we use using apartment sales and valuing it as apartment, it can be substantiated using more information.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you.
I thank the assessor as well. I never thank him for what he's saying, but I'm listening. I'm not ignoring that. Okay.
All right. I thank you, sir. Maurice, questions?
No, Marcel's turn.
Oh, you mean me? No,
Yes,
he's calling Maurice.
I was done with mine, Mr. Chairman. It's Marcel's turn.
All right. Mr. Lavrando, please.
No, Mr. Chair, I think I'll stay out of this one because I'll just end up in the debate.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a few questions. I guess, Mr. Wong, these are hard to evaluate because you do not have any sales of any life leases. So you do have to put a value on it. So I just have a few questions. Who owns this building? They're nonprofit.
I'm not. I mean, on the front page, it says the owner is Sam Inc. for the Colorado location, which is 140 Ferry.
Yeah. Okay, so you don't really own. No, but this is a life lease, and I'm well aware of how they work, but they're tough to evaluate. There is only one bedroom. Do you know whether that might be an ensuite caretaker?
I don't know.
Okay. It sort of came up that way, but also you had talked about there's like fees that go into becoming an owner, not really an owner, but a tenant, I guess. So you had talked about $2.6 million at maybe investing at 3%, and you're probably going to get that. So do you know whether that interest income would be taken into general revenue in regards to operating the building?
I don't know. I actually believe that entrance fee is kind of utilized to sort of offset the initial construction costs. And so it's not sitting somewhere garnering interest. It's just actually preventing interest from being charged on something that they're owed. So say if the building cost $10 million and they were able to have $5 million via entrance fees, then basically for this $10 million building, they have a mortgage of $5 million. And so they don't have to pay interest on the other $5 million. So it's not sitting somewhere gathering interest. But
yeah. I know, as you know, if you bought in there, you don't get any interest. If you live there for 10 years, you don't get any interest on your money, but you do get your original investment back.
Yeah, well, the entrance fee is just refunded.
Yes. But like you said, this is for nonprofit. So, what other questions do I have here? I think that's all the questions that I have. You're using a cap rate of 4.75 because it was built in 1997, correct?
Yes.
And some other factors taken into consideration. Okay, that's good enough. Mr. Story, your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and I'll try and simplify this. We're not considering any income or sort of potential income by way of interest accruing from entrance fees. I think you've rightly summed it up. So we're looking at this from a fee simple perspective. It's on the west side of Ferry Road between Portage and Assiniboine Avenue in the St. James Assiniboine area. It's a 3-story structure. It is indeed built in 1997. It's being used as a multifamily residential building. Again, it is a not-for-profit life lease. Site size is 1.4 acres, and we have 45 units with 1 bachelor suite and 44 2-bedroom units. Mr. Merritt, I think you're probably correct. I haven't checked into it, but I would imagine that bachelor suite would be used for a maintenance person or some caretaker or some such thing. That would, when we see 1, that's a pretty good indication that it's that's what it's being used for. We have 41 indoor parking stalls with 23 outdoor parking stalls. Okay, so ultimately, the income that we see here, it doesn't have a vacancy breakdown. I don't believe there's vacancy in this property. The rents work out to roughly $1,346.55 per month. We're using the actuals that are being reported. We're a fair bit higher than the city, so I don't know if the city will be contesting the EGI in this scenario. But we have indeed stabilized the utilities or the expenses, and you can see very clearly that they do fall in line. The R&M per door is $1,780. We do note again that based on the photos that we've seen here, this property does have some what we'll call very sort of specific amenity space. It's not particularly high grade, but it is there. There's a room for billiards, and there's a room where they have a treadmill, that sort of thing. So there is some what we'll call atypical space in this property in terms of the amenities. The overall, you can see that since 2018, the expenses run from 51.2 to 58.3. We've stabilized them at 58.3%. Ultimately, that cap rate of 4.75 is extremely low. I don't think it's capturing the suite mix. I don't think it's capturing the fact that this is a not-for-profit. I don't know how it's being generated, but we have applied 5.75%. That's consistent with our position on this property in the past. So ultimately, with a NOI based on actuals of 324,360 and using a cap rate of 5.75, we come to an indicated market value of $5,641,046. Again, that's $5,641,000 rounded. And that is based on the fact that we adjust ever so slightly for the fact that the property is nonprofit, and for the fact that, well, we consider the suite count is not typical of market, especially for a property of this vintage. So I do agree with the comment that this may be the highest and best use may indeed be nonprofit, and we do have to consider that. So we have elevated our cap rate somewhat. I feel comfortable at a value of $5,641,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Wong, questions of Mr. Story?
Regarding, so you're adding, what is the Altus cap rate study indicated cap rate for this property?
Well, for market apartments, good properties in good locations, and that presumes good suite mixes, that would be 5.25. And as per our regular course, we've applied a minimum half-point adjustment for the fact that it is social housing, or well, not social housing, but nonprofit, and the fact that it does have a very, very poor suite mix at only 1 bedroom.
Okay. That's all my questions.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Therian?
I just had one question. It's on the replacement reserve of 57,000. I was questioning whether that should be part of the ongoing expenses. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, sir. For these properties, we have a number of, I don't have them in evidence, but we do have a number of board decisions from the municipal board suggesting that we are, it is permissible to include replacement expenditures for these types of properties. So we have included them.
Mm-hmm. So
and you can see it's not it's a fraction of what's actually being included. So it's 7.4% of EGI. So it may be somewhat low, but it's certainly fair to include. And then I believe I have, sorry, let me just flip around here. Yes, I have the expenditure breakdown, very similar to the way that we apply the R&M study. This is on page 22. You can see how we've stabilized that reserve expenditure.
Okay, that's the only question I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you. Marcel?
I was in that same category in the reserve expenditure. That's the money that they're putting into it. Where do they show that it's being spent?
On page 22, you can see how it's itemized. So again, it's the same type of breakdown where you can see it's how those funds are directed, and that shows that horizon from 16 through 20, and it's titled reserve expenditure for 140 Ferry.
Page 20.
So it is page 22 of my brief. So it's 1,286 per door, and it's again same type of methodology where we take the capex out, we back out capex and waste and snow, and it is sort of itemized and color coded for you, so you can see how how those funds are being directed.
And do they say what the minimum amount they can have in the account is?
Oh, no, I don't have that on file, so I'm not sure.
But there is a number, isn't there?
Yeah, there would typically be a study that's done every few years. I don't have that information, but yeah, that would be typical practice.
And that's supposed to be in an interest-bearing account. I don't see any interest.
Well, we wouldn't consider the interest for the, in the fee simple valuation, but yeah, I think you're probably right with that. But we wouldn't consider the interest the same way we wouldn't consider things like mortgage payments, because that would be related to the owner as opposed to, consideration of the fee simple.
Yeah, I think on page 20, there's the on the reserve page, it indicates all that on there.
Oh yeah, there you go. Sorry. Yeah, there you go. It is
There
there.
we go. That's what I was looking for.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
There you go.
I asked the wrong guy.
It's been a long morning.
Mine's- 141,000. 2016, 325. Yeah, it even tells you which bank account it's in. Yeah, okay. I got it now. Thank you very much. That's what I was wondering about.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got no further questions.
I thank you. I think all the questions have been answered. So summation, either party?
No, I just like to go through, I guess, a rebuttal document that I presented.
Oh, we didn't see that one. Okay, hold on. There's a rebuttal document in here.
I'll put that in there, Mr. Chair.
It's
It's
in
not in
there.
there yet. It's not in there yet.
Oh, you're gonna put it in?
Yeah.
I guess just the Altus cap rate properties document rebuttal.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Okay.
You've done that before.
Which we've seen, I guess, Mr. Wong. But
Oh, we
you
should
just
see it.
want to, did you want to talk about it or leave it for us to read?
I'm not sure. Have you seen this one? Can you take a look at it?
Not yet. It's not here yet.
Okay.
We're waiting for it.
Just give us a minute or two.
You want to take 5 minutes, Mr. Chair?
It's there, Mr. Chair.
No.
Gotta wait for technology to catch up.
Yeah. Well, I'm refreshing and it's not refreshing, so. What am I doing wrong? You say it's here?
Yeah.
Well, why is it
I don't
not?
have it. I don't have it either, so.
It'll be lying at the very top. A&T rebuttal, Altus cap rate properties.
Well, I've refreshed 3 times now and it's not coming up. So I guess I'll have to go out and come back in again.
It
Yeah,
could be.
have you got them, Mr. Chair?
I'm working on it.
We're all working on it. Told you we needed 5 minutes. Okay, shut everything down. To heck with it. I'll go back in again.
Okay, let's take 5. Let's take 5. Thanks, Jazz. We'll call the hearing back to order and we're going to deal with the Mr. Wong's rebuttal. So the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. So I guess does everybody have that 2-page document?
Yep.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Just on the page, page 1 of the document, I just wanted to show that Altus has sort of looked for increases in their cap rate higher than what they've stated in their cap rate study based off of negative factors such as wood frame construction or higher bachelor suites or the suites being small or for the parking to suite ratio not being, as they say, perfect, or they say that an increase in cap rate is warranted for having basement suites or it being in a poor location. But as you can see highlighted above in the chart above, the properties in their cap rate study, a lot of them are wood frame construction. Some of them do have bachelor suites, and 277 Langside has a high ratio of bachelor suites. And also some of the properties have smaller units. Also, a lot of the sales have, as they say, not poor parking to unit ratios, and some of them some of the cap rate sales are in poor locations. So I guess what I want to say is that the negative factors that they're using to increase their cap rates, those negative factors are already included in the Altus cap rate study, and that increasing the cap rate, their Altus cap rates further for these negative factors are double counting the negative factors. So I just wanted to try to point that out.
All right.
And then
May I
also,
respond? No,
sorry, I guess also on page 2. On page 2, Altus has indicated that let's say $1,300 repair and maintenance is low, and that $2,000 could be normal. But them saying that is not consistent with the average repair and maintenance in their Altus cap rate study, which shows the average repair and maintenance to be $749. So I'm not sure why there's such a large discrepancy between the repair and maintenance in their cap rate study and the repair and maintenance utilized in the properties in appeal. But also wanted to point out that if you look at the expense ratios for all the properties in the Altus cap rate study, the expense ratio, it ranges from 25% to 51%. So, and they're averaging 37.44% in terms of the expense ratio. So once again, I'm not sure why their cap rate studies expense ratio is so different than the properties that they have in appeal, but it's just pointing out the sort of differences between what they have in their cap rate study and what they're presenting for their properties in appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Jarrett, comments?
Yep.
Question?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm a little confused by these comments. So just to be very, very clear, for the elements that are germane to our discussion today, we've adjusted cap rates for social housing for incurably small suites. We're not talking about quote unquote small units. We're talking about units that are in that 400 square foot range. But just I suppose I find this a bit confusing, but let's just go through this very quickly. I want to just point something out. So we're being, I suppose, accused of double counting. If I look at 677 Maryland, where the assessor is agreeing that's a negative location, we're not adjusting that cap rate. We have two known factors. We know the NOI based on our stabilization. We know the sales price. So the cap rate is based on the actual purchase. So that property would be assigned to us by our, if it were in a good location, would be assigned as we know, a 5.5. That property sold for with a cap rate of 5.66. So that would indicate to us that there was some adjustment for that property. 512 Balmoral, same situation. That property, well, let's see, 512 Balmoral sold at 6.75. We would typically use 5.75 as a baseline. These are not adjustments that we've made. This is the market. And then the last one on Langside, well, that property, let's see here, that's 1974. And again, as you know, I would suggest to you mid 70s properties would typically be applied a 5.5, the actual sale. Those aren't adjustments that we've made. Those are actual. Basically, Mr. Wong, what you've shown us here is that any adjustments that we make, and we don't make them without without very, very good reason, they are indeed supported by what we're seeing in the market. I suppose I'll leave my comments there, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think okay, we've made my point. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Therian, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marcel?
No, I've got no questions on that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Jared, you had talked about rebuttal and you wanted to go there?
No, you know what? No, I'll make a comment in summation, but I just wanted on file that we do not agree with the assessor's cap rates, but I think I've mentioned that verbally a number of times today, but it's there in writing for your consideration. But I think I will leave it there. I think you all are aware of our position.
Great. Either party wants summation, and if so, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess we have presented rebuttal for the Altus cap rate, and with regards to our calculations for 2390 McPhillips in terms of our 4.79% cap rate, our stabilization is in the rebuttal information, and so it's basically I can understand where the applicant is coming from with regards to their CMHC rents, but the difference between our approaches is that we use their actual income and expenses, and the applicant has utilized CMHC rents. That's the difference between our two, and we feel ours is accurate, and they feel theirs is accurate. But that's where the differences lie.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just in summation, we've provided you with a full standalone study, our Altus cap rate study. We've looked at a number of factors affecting value of these multifamily properties in the market. We've looked at the broker reports. We've tracked the development pipeline. We've tracked trends in the rental universe. We feel very, very strongly about our position on the cap rates. We've also provided you with sales. We've provided you with sales with workups. We've been extremely transparent. The assessor has not provided you with any sales to review. We do not know what their assumptions are. There's nothing in direct evidence. Further to that, in properties that have come before these boards this cycle, we have provided you with site-specific analysis based on the actual performance of the properties as we are told to do. That is the purpose of our exercise. The assessor has used a model. And of course, as we've established here today, I think reasonably well, the way the model works, quite frankly, is something of a mystery. So ultimately, I will suggest to you that, or I will request respectfully that weighted consideration is given to our submissions based on the fact that we have provided site-specific analysis based on actual performance of the properties on site-specific basis. We have not used a model. We've been very transparent. And with that, I thank you very much.
I thank you. Mr. Wong, I thank you for your presentations and excellent job, and have a good day. Mr. Story, I thank you for your presentations. Another excellent job, and results very soon. We have heard all the items scheduled. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you both very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.